What if the veil in the Department of Mysteries was a door and Harry could walk between life and death? Chapter 1, the space between Harry's boots echoed against the cold stone floor of the Department of Mysteries. 3 years after the Battle of Hogwarts, he still hated this place. The memories clung to him like cobwebs, Sirius falling through the veil, Hermione nearly dying, the prophecy shattering. "Potter, you coming?" Auror Williamson called from ahead, his wand illuminating the dark corridor. "Yeah," Harry replied, quickening his pace. The investigation into cursed artifacts trafficking had led them back here, following a trail of evidence pointing to someone with department access. Harry's mind wasn't fully on the job though, it never was when they came here. "I'll check this way," Harry said, deliberately steering toward the death chamber. "Fine. Yell if you find anything suspicious," Williamson replied, heading down another corridor. Harry slipped through the familiar door, finding himself alone with the ancient stone archway. The veil hung there, tattered and ethereal, swaying slightly despite the still air. The whispers started immediately, unintelligible but unmistakably voices. He approached slowly, drawn forward as if by a gentle current. In the 3 years since the war, the nightmares hadn't stopped. Fred, Remus, Tonks, Colin. Sirius. Their faces haunted him, along with everyone else who died fighting his war. Harry stood before the veil, close enough to touch it. The whispering grew louder. "I'm sorry," he said softly. His hand reached out, almost of its own accord, fingers brushing the misty fabric. A jolt ran through him, not pain, but recognition. The sensation of his invisibility cloak slipping through his fingers, the weight of the resurrection stone in his palm, the balance of the Elder Wand. The Master of Death. He'd abandoned the wand, dropped the stone, but kept the cloak. Yet something of that power remained within him. He felt it now, resonating with the ancient magic of the veil. Without thinking, Harry stepped forward. The world dissolved into grey mist. Whispers surrounded him, growing clearer with each heartbeat. A strange, weightless feeling overtook him, like floating underwater but still breathing easily. He kept walking, though he couldn't see a path. The mist gradually thinned. Harry found himself in a place that wasn't quite a place, a vast, open space with no visible boundaries. The ground beneath him seemed solid enough, though it had no distinct features. The sky above, if it was a sky, shifted between pale colors that had no names. "Took you long enough to visit." Harry spun around. Standing there, looking exactly as Harry remembered him, was Sirius Black. "This isn't possible," Harry whispered, his wand automatically rising. Sirius grinned, that same devil-may-care smile that had once lit up Grimmauld Place. "And yet, here we are. Am I dead?" Harry asked, his voice steadier than he felt. "No. You're something, in between." Sirius gestured around them. "Welcome to what we call the threshold. Not quite life, not quite death. Most people just pass through on their way to whatever's next. But you're different, Harry. Because I'm Master of Death." The title still felt ridiculous on his tongue. "Got it in one." Sirius stepped closer, looking exactly as he had that night in the Department of Mysteries, before he fell. "You exist in both worlds now. You can cross back and forth." Harry wanted to believe this was real, but years of facing dark magic had taught him caution. "Prove you're really serious." Sirius's smile softened. "Your Patronus is a stag, like your father's animagus form. The first time you saw me, I was a big black dog watching you on Magnolia Crescent after you'd run away from the Dursleys. And..." His voice dropped, "the last thing I called you before I died was, James." Harry's throat tightened. No one else knew that last detail. "It's really you. In the spiritual flesh." Sirius opened his arms, and Harry stepped into them without hesitation. The embrace felt real, solid and warm. Harry clutched his godfather tightly, years of grief breaking free. When they finally pulled apart, Harry wiped his eyes. "There are others who want to see you," Sirius said gently. "If you're ready." Harry nodded, not trusting himself to speak. They walked together across the featureless landscape. As they moved, the space around them shifted subtly, becoming more defined. Shapes appeared in the distance, trees, benches, even what looked like distant mountains. "This place responds to us," Sirius explained. "It becomes what we need or expect. Makes it easier to adjust." Two figures materialized ahead, waiting under a tree that hadn't been there moments before. Harry's steps faltered when he recognized them. James and Lily Potter stood hand in hand, looking exactly as they had when they stepped out of the resurrection stone. But this was different, they weren't pale shadows but vibrant and real. "Harry." His mother's voice was everything he'd imagined, warm and full of love. He didn't remember moving, but suddenly he was wrapped in their embrace, his father's hand on his back, his mother's fingers in his hair. They smelled like home, a home he'd never known but somehow remembered. "How is this possible?" Harry asked when he could speak again. "You tell me," James said, studying his son with pride and curiosity. "You're the one who walked through the veil and didn't die." "I don't understand it myself," Harry admitted. "I just felt something calling me." "The Hallows changed you," Lily explained. "Not just symbolically. The magic of death itself recognizes you now." Harry looked between them. "So I can just visit whenever I want?" "It seems that way," James said. "Though I'd recommend not broadcasting this particular talent." A laugh escaped Harry, surprising him. "Yeah, I can see the Prophet headline now, boy who lived now commutes to afterlife." They all laughed, and for a moment, Harry felt a completeness he'd never known. "How much time do I have here?" he asked. Sirius shrugged. "Time works differently here. But you'll start to feel a pull back eventually. Your body is still in the living world, after all." "There's someone else who's been waiting to see you," Lily said softly. "If you'd like." Before Harry could ask who, a familiar figure approached from behind his parents. Tall, shabby clothed, with premature lines but a gentle smile. "Professor Lupin," Harry breathed. "Just Remus here, Harry." He stepped forward, clasping Harry's hand in both of his. "It's good to see you." "Tonks?" Harry asked. "She's here too. She's with her father right now." A shadow of sadness crossed Remus's face. "We worry about Teddy, though." "He's amazing," Harry said quickly. "Growing like crazy. His hair was turquoise yesterday when I visited. Andromeda's teaching him to say my name." Relief washed over Remus's features. "Thank you for being there for him." Harry spent what felt like hours talking with them, about his life, their lives, everything that had happened since the war. He met others too. Fred Weasley bounded over, looking mischievous as ever, demanding to know how George was doing with the shop. "He misses you," Harry said honestly. "But the business is booming. He created a whole line of products in your honor." Fred's eyes sparkled. "Good. Tell him to name something extra obnoxious after me, will you?" Colin Creevey appeared, camera-free but still enthusiastic, peppering Harry with questions about post-war Hogwarts. Dumbledore nodded to him from a distance but didn't approach, seemingly understanding Harry wasn't ready for that conversation yet. Eventually, Harry felt a tugging sensation, like a hook behind his navel. "You're being called back," Sirius said, noticing Harry's expression. "How do I return?" Harry asked, suddenly panicked at the thought of leaving them. "The same way you came," James said. "Just walk with purpose, thinking of the living world." "Will I be able to come back?" Lily touched his face. "We'll be here, Harry. Whenever you need us." Harry hugged each of them goodbye, promising to return soon. Then he turned and walked into the mist that had begun forming around them. The threshold faded away, and the tugging grew stronger. With a gasping breath, Harry stumbled back from the veil, finding himself exactly where he'd started in the death chamber. He checked his watch, only 10 minutes had passed in the real world. Potter. Williamson's voice echoed from the corridor. Found anything? Harry stared at the gently swaying veil. Nothing, he called back. Nothing at all. You look like you've seen a ghost, Ron said when Harry met him and Hermione for drinks that evening at the Leaky Cauldron. Harry nearly choked on his butterbeer. If only Ron knew how close to the truth he was. Rough day, he replied vaguely. How's the shop? Mental. George's new metamorph mints are selling faster than we can stock them. Turn your hair and eyebrows different colors for an hour. Ron took a long pull from his fire whiskey. He's working too hard though. I'm worried about him. Harry thought of Fred's beaming face in the threshold. He's doing what makes him happy. You really think so? Ron asked, looking uncertain. I know so, Harry said with such conviction that both Ron and Hermione gave him curious looks. How's the trafficking case going? Hermione asked, changing the subject. She worked in the department for the regulation and control of magical creatures now, fighting for better treatment of house elves and other magical beings. Dead ends, Harry said, then winced at his own choice of words. We know someone's smuggling artifacts through the ministry, but can't figure out who. Speaking of work, Hermione lowered her voice, I found something interesting about those memory cases you mentioned. A rash of witches and wizards had been turning up at St. Mungo's with strange, partial memory loss, specifically memories related to deceased loved ones. What did you find? Harry asked, leaning forward. It's not a standard obliviate pattern. The healers say it's more like the memories were extracted. Not erased but physically removed. Like with a pensieve? Ron asked. Similar, but more selective. And permanent. Hermione frowned. The strange thing is, the victims don't seem upset. They know they've lost memories but don't want them restored. Harry's mind raced. After what he'd experienced today, he couldn't help wondering if there was a connection to the veil. Any pattern to the victims? He asked. All of them lost someone in the war, Hermione said quietly. Family members, mostly. The three fell silent, each remembering their own losses. Ginny's asking about you, Ron said eventually. Says you've been distant lately. Harry felt a stab of guilt. Things with Ginny had been complicated since the war. They'd tried rebuilding their relationship, but something kept holding Harry back. I've had a lot on my mind, he said, knowing it was a weak excuse. She loves you, mate, Ron said bluntly. But she can't wait forever. I know. And he did know. Ginny deserved better than his half-presence. I'll talk to her soon. The conversation moved to lighter topics, but Harry's thoughts kept drifting back to the veil and what lay beyond it. Part of him was already planning his next visit. 3 days later, Harry found himself back at the ministry after hours. As head Auror, Robards had granted him access to continue investigating the trafficking case independently. At least, that's what Harry had claimed. The Department of Mysteries was eerily silent as he made his way through its twisting corridors. He still remembered the path to the death chamber perfectly, it featured in enough of his nightmares. This time, he didn't hesitate at the veil. With a deep breath, Harry stepped through. The transition was smoother this time, the mist parting more quickly. The threshold took shape around him, more defined than before, rolling hills, a distant lake, a sky of gentle blues and purples. Back so soon? Sirius appeared beside him, grinning. We should start charging rent. Harry laughed, the sound echoing strangely in this in-between place. I had to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Fair enough. Your father's that way, Sirius pointed toward a cottage that had materialized on a nearby hill. He and your mum created a little sanctuary for themselves. You don't all stay together? Harry asked as they walked. We can be wherever and with whoever we choose here. Distance doesn't work the same way. Sirius gestured vaguely. Some prefer solitude, others company. It shifts. They reached the cottage, which reminded Harry somewhat of the burrow, warm and inviting, if more orderly. Inside, he found not just his parents but Remus and Tonks as well, all sitting around a wooden table as if sharing a meal, though no food was present. Harry. Tonks jumped up, her hair cycling through happy colors, pink, yellow, purple. Watch her. They welcomed him eagerly, pulling up another chair that appeared from nowhere. Harry spent hours telling them about the living world, Teddy's latest adventures, Hermione's advocacy work, the rebuilding of Hogwarts. "And how's your young lady?" James asked with a teasing smile. "Ginny, isn't it?" Harry's expression must have given something away because Lily immediately looked concerned. "What's wrong, love?" "Nothing's wrong, exactly," Harry said, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "We're just... I don't know. Since the war, everything's been different." "Different how?" Remus asked gently. Harry struggled to articulate the feeling. "Like I'm not fully there. Part of me is still stuck in the war, in the forest, he stopped, not wanting to mention his own death experience. "In death?" Sirius finished for him. "Harry, what happened in that forest affected you profoundly. More than most could understand. How can I move forward when so many couldn't?" The question burst from Harry, raw and honest. "Oh, Harry." His mother's eyes were filled with compassion. "That's not how it works. Our lives ending doesn't mean yours should stop." "Look at me," Tonks said firmly. "I have a son I never got to know. Do you think I want him to grow up with a godfather who's only half living because he's guilty about surviving?" Harry flinched. "When you put it that way, we died so you could live, Harry," Remus said. "Really live. Not just exist." The conversation shifted to happier topics after that, but their words lingered with Harry. When he finally felt the tug back to the living world, he left with promises to return, and a lot to think about. Harry became a regular visitor to the threshold over the next few weeks. He discovered he could bring small objects with him, photos to show his parents, a toy for Teddy that Tonks could connect with so the real one would sometimes change colors on its own, messages from George that made Fred howl with laughter. He learned more about the nature of the place too. The dead could not see the living world directly, but they maintained a connection to those they loved. They existed in a state of peace, neither trapped nor completely gone. They could choose to move on to whatever came next, but many chose to remain in the threshold for a time, especially those who died suddenly or with unfinished business. Harry never stayed more than an hour or two in real-world time, careful to schedule his visits when he wouldn't be missed. But keeping the secret was taking its toll. "You look exhausted," Hermione commented one morning when they met for coffee near the ministry. "Just busy," Harry said, stifling a yawn. In truth, he'd been up half the night talking with Sirius about his parents' early days together. Hermione gave him a searching look. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? Whatever it is." For a moment, Harry considered telling her. But how could he explain without sounding insane? Or worse, having her try to stop him. "It's nothing," he insisted. "How's the elf legislation coming?" Hermione let him change the subject, but her worried expression remained. The real breaking point came that weekend at the Burrow. The Weasleys still gathered every Sunday for family dinner, and Harry was expected to attend as practically one of the family. He'd spent the morning in the threshold with Fred, collecting messages and inside jokes for George. By the time he arrived at the Burrow, his mind was caught between worlds, and he found it hard to focus on the here and now. "Harry?" Ginny's voice snapped him back to reality. They were all seated around the dinner table, and apparently someone had asked him a question. "Sorry, what?" "I asked if you'd heard about the Holyhead Harpies offering me a position," Ginny said, a hint of hurt in her voice. "That's brilliant. Harry said, genuinely pleased for her despite his distraction. When did that happen? I told you yesterday, she said quietly. When we had lunch. Harry felt a cold rush of shame. He had no memory of having lunch with Ginny yesterday. Had he forgotten? Or had he been so preoccupied he'd missed something important? Right, of course, he said lamely. Sorry, I'm just tired. Across the table, George was watching him with an odd expression. Later, as everyone moved to the living room for tea, George cornered Harry in the kitchen. Who did you talk to? He asked without preamble. What? George's eyes bore into him. You said something earlier. About Weasley's Wild Wire, our new product. We haven't announced it yet. Fred and I came up with the concept together before, his voice caught. Before. Only Fred would know we called the prototype Electric Sheep. Harry froze, realizing his mistake. He'd relayed Fred's message without thinking. I must have heard you mention it sometime, he tried. No, George said firmly. I've never told anyone that name. So I'll ask again, who did you talk to? Harry looked at George's face, identical to the one he'd spoken with just hours ago, yet marked by grief in a way Fred's never would be. He made a decision. Not here, he said quietly. Meet me tomorrow. I'll show you. The next morning found Harry and George standing before the veil. Harry had signed them both in as part of his ongoing investigation, using his aura clearance. This is mental, George whispered, staring at the tattered curtain. You're saying you can just walk through and talk to them? Yes, Harry said simply. I can take you with me. George's face went through a rapid cycle of emotions, disbelief, hope, fear. How do you know I'll be able to come back? I'll anchor you, Harry explained, holding out his hand. The connection works both ways. I can pull you back if needed. George stared at Harry's outstretched hand for a long moment, then grabbed it firmly. Let's do it before I lose my nerve. Together, they stepped into the veil. George's gasp echoed in the mist as it cleared to reveal the threshold. Harry kept a tight grip on his hand, feeling the subtle pull that connected them both to their bodies. This way, Harry said, guiding them forward. Fred was waiting, as if he'd known they were coming. The twins stared at each other across the impossible distance between life and death. Took you long enough, you ugly git, Fred said, his voice cracking despite the joke. George made a sound between a laugh and a sob and lunged forward, Harry releasing his hand as the twins collided in a fierce embrace. Harry stepped back, giving them privacy for their reunion. He wandered a short distance away, where he found Remus sitting on a bench that overlooked a misty valley. That was a kind thing you did, Remus said as Harry joined him. But also dangerous. Harry nodded. I know. But he needed this. Be careful, Harry, Remus warned. The boundary between worlds exists for a reason. Even you, as Master of Death, should respect that boundary. I'm not doing any harm, Harry protested. Aren't you? Remus looked at him with gentle concern. You've been spending more time here than with the living. Your friends are worried. Ginny is worried. Harry looked away, unable to argue the point. The dead don't need you, Harry, Remus continued softly. We've made our peace. It's the living who need you now. Before Harry could respond, he noticed something strange. The edges of the threshold seemed to waver, like heat rising from pavement. The peaceful atmosphere briefly turned cold. What was that? Harry asked. Remus frowned. I'm not sure. It's happened a few times recently. Like something's pressing against the barrier between worlds. The disturbance passed quickly, but it left Harry uneasy. When it was time to return, he had to practically drag George away from Fred, the emotional parting nearly breaking Harry's resolve to continue these visits. Back in the death chamber, George collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Thank you, he whispered hoarsely. Merlin, Harry, thank you. Harry helped him up, but a chill remained in his bones. Something wasn't right about that disturbance, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his repeated crossings had something to do with it. 2 days later, Hermione cornered Harry at his desk in the Auror office. We need to talk, she said, her expression deadly serious. Not here. They found an empty conference room, and Hermione cast privacy charms before turning to him. What's going on with you, Harry? She demanded. And don't say nothing. George came to me yesterday, half hysterical, talking about seeing Fred. Harry's stomach dropped. He told you? Everything, Hermione confirmed. About the veil, about you being able to cross over. He made me promise not to stop you, but Harry, this is incredibly dangerous magic you're meddling with. I'm not meddling, Harry said defensively. I'm just visiting. The veil is one of the most mysterious magical artifacts in existence. It's a literal gateway between life and death. Hermione's voice rose despite the privacy charms. And you're treating it like a door to the corner shop. You don't understand, Harry snapped. I can talk to them, Hermione. My parents. Sirius. Everyone we lost. And you don't think that's affecting you? Your work is suffering. Ron says you barely remember conversations you had the day before. Ginny thinks you're pulling away from her. I'm handling it, Harry insisted. Hermione's expression softened. Harry, I understand the temptation. If I could see my grandparents again. But there are laws to magic, fundamental principles. Life and death are separate for a reason. I'm not bringing anyone back, Harry argued. I'm just visiting. And what about those memory cases? Hermione pressed. 11 people now, all with memories of dead loved ones mysteriously extracted. You don't find the timing suspicious? Harry hesitated. He'd had the same thought but hadn't wanted to face the implications. You think there's a connection to my visits? I think someone might be aware of what you're doing, Hermione said carefully. Someone who's very interested in the boundary between worlds. A chill ran down Harry's spine as he remembered the disturbance in the threshold. There was something odd during my last visit. Like something was pushing against the barrier. Hermione's eyes widened. Harry, you need to stop. At least until we understand what's happening. I can't, Harry said, the words escaping before he could stop them. They're waiting for me. Listen to yourself. Hermione grabbed his shoulders. The living need you here. Now. Her words echoed Remus's warning, cutting through Harry's defenses. He saw the genuine fear in her eyes and felt shame wash over him. Okay, he said finally. I'll take a break. And I'll help you investigate the memory cases. Relief flooded Hermione's face. Thank you. We'll figure this out together, like we always do. Keeping his promise proved harder than Harry anticipated. The pull of the veil haunted him day and night. He dreamt of the threshold, of his parents waiting for him, wondering why he hadn't returned. To distract himself, he threw himself into the investigation. Working with Hermione, they mapped all 11 memory cases, looking for patterns. All victims had lost someone in the war. All had visited the memorial at Hogwarts within a week before their memory loss. And all reported being approached by someone claiming to work for the Ministry's Grief Support Initiative, a program that didn't exist. It's definitely connected, Hermione said as they reviewed their notes in Harry's flat. Someone's targeting people grieving war losses. But why take memories? Ron asked, joining their investigation after hours. And why don't the victims seem upset about it? I have a theory, Hermione said slowly. What if someone's found a way to extract not just the memory, but the emotional pain attached to it? Harry thought about the peace he found in the threshold, the comfort of seeing those he'd lost. Like offering them relief from grief. Exactly, Hermione nodded. But at what cost? Those memories, painful as they are part of who we are. We need to find this person, Harry said, a sense of urgency building. If they're manipulating the boundary somehow. There's something else, Hermione said hesitantly. I've been researching the veil. It's ancient, possibly predating Hogwarts itself. The Department of Mysteries acquired it in the 1700s, but records of its origins are sparse. What did you find? Harry asked. Stories of a ritual, she said. A theoretical way to thin the veil between worlds, allowing greater communication with the dead. But it required a conduit, someone who could cross the boundary at will. Harry felt the blood drain from his face. Someone like the Master of Death. Yes, Hermione whispered. Harry, I think someone's using your crossings to weaken the barrier. The disturbance you felt, the memory extractions, they're all part of something bigger. But who? Ron asked. And what's their end game? The answer came sooner than they expected. The next morning, a memo landed on Harry's desk. Another memory case had been reported, but this time, the victim had managed to give a description of the Ministry grief counselor before losing their memories. Tall, thin, with silver hair and a scar across his left cheek, Harry read. Speaks with a slight Welsh accent. That sounds like Abraxas Thorne, said Williamson, who happened to be passing by. Works in the Department of Mysteries. Unspeakable. Harry's head snapped up. An unspeakable. With access to the death chamber? I suppose so, Williamson shrugged. Known for being a bit odd, even by unspeakable standards. Lost his wife and daughters in the First War, never quite recovered. Harry exchanged a significant look with Ron, who had been dropping off lunch. This was their lead. Researching an unspeakable proved challenging. Their work was classified, their movements within the department unrecorded. But Harry had an advantage, his connection to the dead. Breaking his promise to Hermione, he visited the Vale that night. The threshold felt different this time, colder, the mist thicker, the boundaries less defined. Something's wrong, Sirius said as soon as Harry arrived. The balance is shifting. I need information, Harry said urgently. About an unspeakable named Abraxas Thorne. Sirius's expression darkened. He's been noticed here. Some of the more recently departed have seen him observing from the edges, not fully crossing over like you, but peering in. That's not possible, Harry said. Only I can cross through. He's found another way, came Lily's voice as she approached. He's extracting memories of the dead and using them to create tiny tears in the barrier. Like picking at a seam until it unravels. Why? Harry asked. What does he want? What do most who obsess over death want? James joined them, his face grim. To conquer it. To bring back those they've lost. He lost his family in the First War, Harry remembered. And now he thinks he's found a way to eliminate the boundary completely, Remus said, appearing with a concerned Tonks. But he doesn't understand the consequences. What consequences? If the worlds merge, neither will function properly, Lily explained. The living need to live, the dead need to move on. A merged realm would trap both in limbo forever. I need to stop him, Harry said. How? The veil responds to you as Master of Death, Sirius said. You can strengthen the boundary, but only if you fully commit to your role. Meaning what? Harry asked. Meaning you must choose, Lily said gently. You cannot live between worlds forever, Harry. You must be fully present in the land of the living, with only the natural connection to the dead that all humans have, memory and love. Harry felt as if he'd been doused in ice water. You're saying I have to give this up? Never come back. We're saying you need to live your life, James corrected. We'll always be part of you, but this, he gestured around the threshold, this isn't where you belong. Not yet. The truth of his father's words hit Harry hard. He'd been hiding in the threshold, using it as an escape rather than facing the challenges of moving forward after the war. I don't know if I can let go, Harry admitted. You can, Sirius said firmly. You're the strongest person I know, Harry. And you won't be letting go of us, just this way of reaching us. Thorne will make his move soon, Remus warned. The barrier is already weakening. When you feel the pull back, follow it, and don't return until you're ready to restore the balance. Harry nodded, though his heart felt like lead. Tell me everything you know about Thorne's plan. By the time Harry felt the tug back to the living world, he had a clearer understanding of what they faced. According to the dead who had observed Thorne's experiments, the unspeakable had developed a method of extracting grief-laden memories and using them to erode the barrier. Each extraction created a tiny thread between worlds. His ultimate goal was to perform a ritual during the upcoming solstice, using Harry's unique ability as the final catalyst to permanently merge the realms. Back in the Department of Mysteries, Harry wasted no time contacting Ron and Hermione. They met at Grimmauld Place, where Harry explained everything. I told you not to go back. Hermione exclaimed, though her concern outweighed her anger. I know, and you were right, Harry admitted. But now we know what we're facing. So this Thorne bloke is extracting people's painful memories to create holes in the barrier. Ron summarized. That's properly twisted. And he needs me to complete his ritual, Harry added. As the only one who can fully cross over. Then we need to keep you away from the department until after the solstice, Hermione said practically. Without you, he can't finish his work. It's not that simple, Harry said, pacing the kitchen. The barrier's already weakening. If we don't repair it soon, it might collapse on its own. And you're the only one who can repair it, Hermione concluded, her expression somber. Because you're the master of death. Harry nodded. But to do it, I have to give up my ability to cross over. Commit fully to this world. Ron and Hermione exchanged glances. Are you ready for that? Ron asked quietly. Harry thought about his parents, Sirius, Remus, Fred, all waiting in the threshold. The comfort he'd found in their presence. The escape from his grief and guilt. I have to be, he said finally. They're right. I belong here, with the living. With you both, with Ginny, with everyone who's still fighting to build something after the war. Then let's make a plan, Hermione said, summoning parchment and quill. We need to confront Thorne before the solstice. The next day, Harry did something he should have done weeks ago, he visited Ginny at the burrow. She was surprised to see him, having grown accustomed to his increasingly frequent absences. Harry? Is everything all right? She asked as they walked through the orchard behind the house. No, he said honestly. But I'm working on it. He told her everything, about the veil, the threshold, his visits with the dead, and now Thorne's plot. He half expected her to be angry, to feel betrayed that he'd kept such a secret, but Ginny listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. I understand why you went back, she said when he finished. After everything you lost, how could you not? You're not angry? Ginny smiled sadly. I've missed Fred every day. If I could see him again, talk to him. I'd be tempted too. I've been unfair to you, Harry said, taking her hand. Living between worlds instead of fully being here with you. You needed time to heal, Ginny said. We all did. I'm ready to be here now, Harry promised. Completely. If you'll still have me. Ginny's answer was to pull him into a kiss that left no doubt about her feelings. Later, as they returned to the house, Ginny asked, What will you do about Thorne? Stop him, Harry said simply. And then close the door I opened. The confrontation came sooner than they planned. That evening, an alarm was triggered in the Department of Mysteries. Harry, still on call as an Auror, responded along with Ron and a team of other Aurors. They found the death chamber door blown open, and inside, Abraxas Thorne stood before the veil. He was tall and gaunt, with silver hair and the scar Williamson had mentioned. Around him, Glass vials containing swirling silver memories were arranged in a complex pattern. "Potter," Thorne said without turning. "Right on schedule." "Step away from the veil," Harry ordered, wand raised. Thorne turned slowly. His eyes had a feverish gleam. "Do you know how long I've waited for someone like you? The legend spoke of a master of death who could bridge the worlds, but for centuries, it seemed merely a story." "What you're doing is dangerous," Harry said, moving closer while signaling the other Aurors to stay back. "You're weakening the barrier between worlds." "That's the point," Thorne smiled, revealing unnaturally white teeth. "To eliminate the cruel separation, the arbitrary boundary that takes those we love." "It's not arbitrary," Harry said. "Life and death are part of a natural balance." "What do you know of it?" Thorne spat, his calm facade cracking. "You visit them whenever you please. You walk between worlds while the rest of us are left with nothing but grief and memories." "I was wrong to do that," Harry admitted. "It's not how things are meant to be." "You squander your gift," Thorne snarled. "But no matter. You've weakened the barrier enough with your crossings. These," he gestured to the memory vials, "will widen the gap. The ritual merely needs a catalyst now." With alarming speed, Thorne flicked his wand. The vials rose into the air, their contents streaming toward the veil like silver ribbons. The fabric of the veil began to ripple violently, the whispers growing to a roar. "Stop!" Harry shouted, firing a stunning spell that Thorne deflected easily. "Too late," the unspeakable laughed. "The memories are the key, grief is the thread that connects both worlds. Each memory creates another link." The other Auror started firing spells, but Thorne had erected some kind of barrier around himself and the veil. Ron tried to break through with more powerful curses, to no avail. "Harry!" Ron shouted. "We can't get through." The silver memory strands were now weaving into the veil itself, creating a shimmering web. The archway began to glow with an unnatural light, and through it, Harry could see glimpses of the threshold, but distorted, wrong. "You don't understand what you're doing," Harry said desperately. "If you merge the worlds, you'll trap both the living and dead in limbo. No one will find peace." "Peace?" Thorne's face contorted. "I haven't known peace since they died. Why should anyone else?" Harry realized he was dealing with a man consumed by grief, driven mad by loss. Reasoning wouldn't work. He had to act. The barrier Thorne had created didn't affect Harry the same way, likely because of his connection to the veil. He pushed forward, feeling resistance but managing to advance step by step. "Stay back," Thorne warned, firing a curse that Harry barely dodged. "You said you need a catalyst," Harry said, continuing his approach. "You meant me, didn't you? The Master of Death." Thorne's eyes gleamed. "Yes. Your power will complete the merging. Willingly or not." "Then take me," Harry said, lowering his wand. "Harry, no." Ron shouted from behind the barrier. "I know what I'm doing," Harry called back, never taking his eyes off Thorne. The unspeakable looked suspicious but couldn't resist the opportunity. "Step into the veil," he commanded. "Your connection will open it permanently." Harry moved toward the veil, which was now pulsating with energy. The whispers had become a cacophony of voices, some familiar, some strange and discordant. "Harry, please." Ron's voice broke through the chaos. "There has to be another way." Harry turned slightly. "Tell Ginny." He paused. "Tell her I'll see her soon." With that, he stepped through the veil. The threshold that greeted him was unrecognizable. The peaceful in-between place was now turbulent, the landscape shifting violently. Figures moved through the chaos, the dead, confused and distressed by the disruption. "Harry!" His mother's voice reached him through the maelstrom. She appeared at his side, looking frantic. "What's happening?" "Thorne's ritual," Harry explained quickly. He's using extracted memories to tear open the barrier. You must stop him. James materialized beside Lily, his expression grave. The worlds cannot merge this way. I know what to do, Harry said. But I need your help, all of you. Sirius, Remus, Tonks, Fred, and others appeared, gathering around Harry in the eye of the storm. As Master of Death, I can repair the barrier, Harry explained. But I need to channel the power correctly. I need you to help me focus. Tell us what to do, Sirius said without hesitation. Form a circle, Harry instructed. Think about the natural order, life flowing to death, death giving way to new life. A cycle, not a merging. They formed a circle around Harry, joining hands. As they concentrated, a calm began to spread outward from their group, like ripples in a pond. Now, Harry continued, I need to find Thorne. He's likely trying to cross over. There, Fred pointed to a disturbance in the mist. Something's forcing its way through. Harry saw it, a tear in the fabric of the threshold, with Thorne's figure visible on the other side, trying to push through. Unlike Harry's smooth transitions, Thorne's attempt was violent, forcing rather than following the natural flow. Keep the circle, Harry said. I'll deal with him. He approached the tear, feeling the power of the Hallows resonating within him. Not from possessing them physically, but from having accepted their true meaning, that death was not an enemy to be conquered but a natural part of existence. Thorne! Harry called. Stop this now. The unspeakable's face appeared in the tear, distorted and ghostly. Potter! Help me through. We can be with them forever. That's not how it works, Harry said firmly. The dead have their place, and we have ours. Until it's our time. I won't be separated from them again. Thorne cried, his voice breaking. My daughters, my wife, I've found a way back to them. They're not here, Harry said gently. Those who find peace move on from the threshold. You're destroying both worlds for nothing. Rage and desperation twisted Thorne's features. Liar. They're waiting for me. Harry. A soft voice spoke behind him. He turned to see three figures, a woman and two young girls, faint and translucent compared to the others. Are you? Yes, the woman said. We've been watching from beyond. Abraxas doesn't understand, we haven't been trapped here. We chose to move on. Can you speak to him? Harry asked. The woman nodded sadly. One last time. Harry stepped aside, allowing the spirits to approach the tear. Thorne's expression transformed from rage to shock, then to wonder. Eleanor? Iris? Lily? His voice was barely a whisper. Abraxas, the woman, Eleanor, said gently. This isn't the way. You're hurting both worlds. I've been trying to reach you, Thorne sobbed. For so long. We know, she said. But this path will only cause pain. Let us go, my love. Live your life. We'll be waiting when it's truly your time. I can't, Thorne's voice broke. I don't know how. Yes, you can, one of the girls said. Be brave, Daddy. Like you taught us. Harry watched the exchange with a heavy heart, understanding Thorne's desperation all too well. But he also knew what needed to be done. Turning back to his own circle of loved ones, Harry said, It's time. I need to restore the barrier. You know what that means, Sirius said soberly. Harry nodded. No more visits. Not until my natural time comes. We'll always be with you, Lily said, touching his face. In here. She placed her hand over his heart. I know, Harry said, fighting back tears. I'm ready now. He moved to the center of their circle and raised his hands. The power of the Hallows surged through him, not the objects themselves, but what they represented. The cloak, acceptance that all must eventually face death. The stone, the memory of loved ones carried in the heart. The wand, the courage to meet life's challenges head-on. Harry focused this power on the tear where Thorne was still reaching through, speaking with his family's spirits. The unspeakable's resistance was fading as understanding dawned on his face. "Let go, Thorne," Harry called. "Trust that they'll be waiting when the time is right." Thorne looked at his family one last time, then at Harry. Slowly, he nodded, withdrawing his hand from the tear. With that final barrier removed, Harry channeled his power through the circle of spirits, directing it outward to heal the damaged boundary. The threshold began to stabilize, the violent shifts calming, the discordant voices quieting. "It's working," Remus observed as the tear began to close. Harry felt the natural order reasserting itself. The boundary between worlds wasn't meant to be a wall but a veil, thin enough for love to pass through in the form of memory, thick enough to maintain the necessary separation. As the tear sealed completely, Harry turned to his parents, Sirius, and the others. "This is goodbye, for now." "For now," James agreed, embracing his son. "Live well, Harry. That's all we've ever wanted for you." "We're so proud of you," Lily whispered, holding him tight. One by one, Harry embraced them all, knowing it would be decades before he saw them again. "Tell George to name the new product line Ghostly Gags," Fred said with a wink. "He'll know what it means." "Take care of Teddy," Tonks said. "And tell him about us." "Not the embarrassing parts," Remus added with a smile. Sirius was the last. "You've outgrown needing a godfather, Harry," he said proudly. "You've become the man James and Lily always hoped you'd be." "I had good examples to follow," Harry replied, his voice thick with emotion. The pull back to the living world was stronger now, more insistent. Harry knew it was time to go. "I love you all," he said simply. "And we love you," they responded in unison. Harry closed his eyes and let the pull take him, carrying the warmth of their love with him as he returned to where he belonged. Harry gasped as he emerged from the veil, stumbling forward into Ron's waiting arms. The barrier Thorne had created was gone, and the Aurors had the unspeakable restrained. The memory vials lay shattered on the floor, their contents dissipated. "Bloody hell, Harry," Ron breathed, helping him stand. "Thought we'd lost you." "Not yet," Harry managed, his voice hoarse. "Not for a long time." Thorne looked up as Harry approached. The madness had left his eyes, replaced by a profound sadness, but also a hint of peace. "They've moved on," he said quietly. "Yes," Harry confirmed. "But they'll be waiting when it's time. The real time." Thorne nodded, allowing himself to be led away without resistance. Later, after the department had been secured and statements taken, Harry found himself sitting in his office with Ron and Hermione, explaining everything that had happened in the threshold. "So the barrier is repaired?" Hermione asked. "Yes," Harry said. "Completely. The veil is just a veil again, at least for me. You can't cross over anymore." Ron looked both relieved and sympathetic. "No," Harry shook his head. "And that's as it should be. Are you okay with that?" Hermione asked gently. Harry considered the question. "I am," he said, surprising himself with how true it felt. "They're not gone, not really. They're just waiting. And I have a lot to do here first." Ron clapped him on the shoulder. "Like finally treating my sister right?" Harry laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "That's at the top of the list." Epilogue 6 months later, Harry stood in the garden of the Burrow, watching as friends and family gathered to celebrate Victoire Weasley's first birthday. The spring sun warmed his face as he sipped his butterbeer, taking in the scene. George was demonstrating the latest Weasley's Wizard Wheezes product, Ghostly Gags, enchanted toys that would occasionally move on their own. He caught Harry's eye and raised his glass in a silent toast. Ron and Hermione were arguing good-naturedly about something, their hands intertwined despite their debate. Molly was fussing over the food, while Arthur tinkered with a Muggle radio. Bill and Fleur watched proudly as their daughter toddled around the garden. And next to Harry, her hand in his, stood Ginny. They'd rebuilt their relationship slowly over the past months, stronger now for the honesty between them. "Happy?" Ginny asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "Very," Harry replied, squeezing her hand. "Just thinking about how lucky I am to be here. With all of you. Getting philosophical in your old age," she teased. Harry laughed. "Something like that." Across the garden, Teddy Lupin's hair turned a vibrant turquoise as Andromeda helped him chase gnomes. Harry felt a familiar pang watching him, thinking of Remus and Tonks. As if reading his mind, Ginny said softly, "You know, sometimes when Teddy laughs, he sounds just like Tonks." "You think so?" Harry asked. Hum. And he gets that serious, thoughtful look that's pure Remus." Ginny leaned her head against his shoulder. "They're still here, in their own way." Harry put his arm around her, watching as life continued all around him, messy, chaotic, beautiful life. He no longer felt caught between worlds. This was where he belonged. The veil would wait. For now, he had living to do. Chapter 2, Echoes of the Fallen. Harry yanked off his aura robes and tossed them over a chair, still fuming from the argument with Robards. 6 months since the Thorne incident, and the head Auror still treated him like glass. "You're distracted, Potter," Robards had said. "Take some time off." "That's an order." Forced leave. Again. Like he hadn't proven himself 100 times over. Rough day. Ginny appeared in the doorway of their flat, balancing a quaffle on one finger, a habit she'd picked up during Harpy's training. "Robards benched me." Again. Harry kicked off his boots with more force than necessary. "Says I'm not focused enough for the Selwyn case." Ginny caught the quaffle as it toppled and set it aside. "You did zone out 3 times during dinner last night. That was different." Harry ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "Just thinking about." He trailed off, but Ginny knew. It had been 6 months since he'd sealed the veil, 6 months since he'd said goodbye to his parents, to Sirius, to everyone waiting in the threshold. The right choice, but still. "I get it." Ginny crossed the room and sat beside him. "But maybe Robards has a point. You've been working non-stop since the whole Thorne mess." Harry sighed, the anger deflating. "What am I supposed to do with time off? Sit around and think about everyone I can't see anymore? You could help George at the shop. Or come to Harpy's practice. Or," Ginny waggled her eyebrows suggestively, "we could finally take that trip to Romania to visit Charlie." A reluctant smile tugged at Harry's lips. "Dragons, huh?" "Dragons," Ginny confirmed, leaning in to kiss him. "And no ministry, no reporters, no expectations. Just us." The idea was more appealing than Harry wanted to admit. Maybe a break would help clear his head. Maybe, a silver terrier burst through their window, materializing into Ron's Patronus. "Harry, something weird at Hogwarts. McGonagall's asking for you specifically. Meet me at the gates." The Patronus dissolved, leaving Harry and Ginny staring at the empty space. "So much for time off," Ginny said with a resigned sigh. Harry was already reaching for his boots. "I'll make it up to you." Ginny tossed him his wand from the side table. "You always do. Just be careful, okay?" "Always am." Harry paused to kiss her properly. "Save that Romania idea. I like it." 20 minutes later, Harry apparat to Hogsmeade and jogged toward the Hogwarts gates where Ron waited, pacing anxiously. "Took you long enough," Ron said, but the familiar complaint lacked heat. "What's going on?" Harry asked as they walked up the path toward the castle. "Your message wasn't exactly detailed." Ron lowered his voice despite there being no one nearby. "McGonagall didn't want to say much through official channels. But there's been sightings. Sightings of what? Ghosts. Or not ghosts exactly. McGonagall says they're different from the house ghosts, more solid, more real. Ron shot Harry a significant look. Started last night. A bunch of students saw Dumbledore walking the corridors. Harry nearly tripped. Dumbledore? That's impossible. Yeah, well, tell that to the 20 kids who swear they saw him. And Hagrid says he spotted Colin Creevey taking pictures by the lake this morning. Cold dread pooled in Harry's stomach. Colin's dead. Exactly. Ron looked grim. McGonagall thinks it might be connected to what happened with the veil. Harry quickened his pace. 6 months of normality, of trying to move on, and now this. The universe clearly had other plans. The castle came into view, looking peaceful in the late afternoon sun. No outward sign that anything was amiss. But as they approached the entrance, Harry noticed Hagrid pacing nervously, Fong at his heels. Harry. Ron. The half-giant's relief was palpable. Thank goodness you're here. Strangest thing I ever saw, and that's saying something. The sightings? Harry asked. Hagrid nodded vigorously. Not just Colin. Saw Professor Lupin too, headin' into the forest like he used to when he was teachin'. Called out to him, but he just faded away. Harry exchanged a look with Ron. Let's talk to McGonagall. They found the headmistress in her office, along with Professors Flitwick and Vector, all looking grave. McGonagall's face showed subtle relief when she spotted Harry. Potter, thank you for coming so quickly. She gestured for them to sit. I assume Mr. Weasley has filled you in on our situation. He mentioned sightings, Harry said carefully. People who died during the war. Not just during the war, Professor Vector interjected. A 7th-year Ravenclaw reported seeing Cedric Diggory this morning near the Quidditch pitch. Harry felt like he'd been punched. Cedric? Yes, McGonagall confirmed. And Professor Burbage was seen in her old classroom by 3 different staff members. They're not like our regular ghosts, squeaked Flitwick. Nearly Headless Nick says they don't communicate with him or the others. They appear, sometimes seem to go about activities they did in life, then vanish. Harry's mind raced. When exactly did this start? The first confirmed sighting was at 9:43 last evening, McGonagall said precisely. Mr. Filch reported seeing Albus on the 7th floor. Since then, we've had 18 distinct sightings of 9 different individuals. All deceased, Ron clarified. All deceased, McGonagall confirmed grimly. Harry stood and walked to the window, looking out over the grounds. 6 months ago, he'd sealed the veil, restored the boundary between worlds. This shouldn't be happening. Potter, McGonagall's voice softened slightly. Given your experience with the Department of Mysteries incident, we hoped you might have insight. Harry turned back to face them. He'd never told McGonagall the full story of what happened with Thorne and the veil. Few people knew he'd been able to cross between worlds, even fewer about his title as Master of Death. I think, Harry said slowly, the boundary between worlds is weakening again. But Thorne is in Azkaban, Ron pointed out. And you said you fixed the veil. I did, Harry frowned. At least, I thought I did. Could there be other access points? Flitwick asked. Other veils, between worlds? Not that I know of, Harry said. But Hogwarts has always had a strong connection to those who've passed through it. During the battle, I saw everyone who died protecting the castle, helping me in the forest. The castle's magic combined with so many deaths on the grounds, McGonagall mused. Could that have created a thin spot in the boundary? Maybe, Harry said, though he wasn't convinced. Something else was happening here. Have any of these appearances tried to communicate? Interact with anyone? Not directly, Vector said. Though Miss Henley from Hufflepuff said Cedric seemed to look right at her before he disappeared. Harry made a decision. I need to see one for myself. And I should contact Hermione. She researched the veil extensively after what happened with Thorne. I've already sent for Ms. Granger, McGonagall said. She should be arriving shortly. As if on cue, a knock came at the door, and Hermione entered, carrying a stack of books and looking harried. Sorry I'm late. I had to grab these from the Ministry archives. She dropped the books on McGonagall's desk with a thud. I came as soon as I got your message, Headmistress. Quick hugs were exchanged before Hermione got straight to business. I've been looking into boundary magic since the Thorne incident, she explained, flipping open a particularly ancient-looking tome. Specifically, places where the barrier between worlds might be naturally thinner. And? Harry prompted. And Hogwarts is definitely on the list. Hermione pointed to a faded illustration showing a castle surrounded by a strange aura. Places with concentrated magical energy, especially those with significant historical events involving death, can develop what magical theorists call membrane thinning. English, Hermione, Ron said. The barrier gets weaker, she explained patiently. Not enough for actual crossing like the veil allows, but enough that echoes can sometimes bleed through. Echoes? McGonagall asked. Impressions of those who've passed, Hermione said. Not ghosts, who choose to remain, but more like reflections from the other side. That still doesn't explain why it's happening now, Harry pointed out. The battle was 3 years ago. Hermione bit her lip. That's the part I'm not sure about. Something must have triggered it. A soft cough drew their attention to the portrait of Albus Dumbledore, who had been listening quietly until now. If I might offer a thought, the painted Dumbledore said, eyes twinkling, the barrier between worlds follows certain natural rhythms. Samhain, or Halloween as it's commonly known now, is traditionally when the veil is thinnest. But it's April, Ron pointed out. Indeed, Dumbledore's portrait agreed. Which suggests something unnatural is affecting the boundary. Before anyone could respond, the office door burst open and a breathless prefect stumbled in. Headmistress. Come quick. The girl's eyes were wide with alarm. There's dozens of them now, all over the castle. They rushed down to the entrance hall, which had become a scene of barely controlled chaos. Students huddled in groups, some excited, others terrified, as professors attempted to maintain order. And walking among them. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. Harry could only stare. At least a dozen figures moved through the hall, transparent but more substantial than ghosts, with color rather than pearly white. Fred Weasley leaned against the banister, watching the scene with obvious amusement. Professor Lupin stood near the doors with Tonks at his side, her hair cycling through colors. Colin Creevey darted around with his phantom camera. Lavender Brown sat on the stairs, looking confused. And standing in the center of it all, observing with serene interest, was Albus Dumbledore. The real Dumbledore, not his portrait. He turned as they approached, and for a heart-stopping moment, his eyes met Harry's. Fascinating, the apparition said, his voice distant yet clear. The threads are unraveling. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, all the figures faded, leaving the hall in stunned silence. McGonagall recovered first. Prefects, escort your houses back to their common rooms. Staff meeting in my office immediately. As students reluctantly dispersed, still buzzing with excitement, Harry remained frozen. The look in Dumbledore's eyes, recognition, warning, and something else. Fear. Harry. Hermione touched his arm. Are you okay? He shook himself. That wasn't just an echo. He spoke to me. He knew me. We need to figure this out, Ron said. Before it gets worse. It's already worse, Harry said grimly. Much worse than you know. The emergency staff meeting ran late into the night. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had been included as special consultants, though Harry suspected McGonagall simply trusted them to handle supernatural crises after everything they'd been through. "We've established a pattern," Hermione explained, pointing to a map of Hogwarts where they'd marked each sighting. "They're concentrated in locations with significant magical energy or where deaths occurred during the battle. The Great Hall, the Room of Requirement, the bridge," Flitwick noted. "And they're getting stronger," Harry added. "The first sightings were brief, solitary. Now they're appearing in groups, becoming more solid, even speaking." "What does it mean?" Professor Sprout asked, wringing her soil-stained hands. Harry exchanged glances with Ron and Hermione. It was time for the full truth. 6 months ago, Harry began, there was an incident in the Department of Mysteries involving what they call the Veil, a direct passage between the world of the living and the dead. He explained about Thorne, the ritual, and the weakening barrier, though he carefully omitted his own ability to cross over. That secret remained known only to Ron, Hermione, George, and Ginny. "We believed the barrier was repaired," Harry concluded. "But clearly, something's still wrong. Or someone's interfering again," Ron suggested. "Thorne is in Azkaban," McGonagall pointed out. "But his research isn't," Hermione said. "The Department of Mysteries confiscated everything, but what if someone else has picked up where he left off?" The discussion continued as they debated theories and planned protective measures for the students. Harry participated, but part of his mind kept returning to Dumbledore's words, "The threads are unraveling." By midnight, they'd established patrol schedules and containment protocols should the apparitions return. As the meeting broke up, McGonagall held Harry back. "Potter, a word." When the others had left, she fixed him with her penetrating gaze. "There's more to your involvement with the Veil than you've shared." It wasn't a question. Harry considered denying it, but this was McGonagall, she'd always seen through him. "Yes," he admitted. "But I'm not sure it's relevant to what's happening now. I think we're beyond the point of withholding potentially crucial information, don't you?" Her tone was gentle despite the rebuke. Harry sighed. "You're right." He took a deep breath. "I can, or could, walk through the Veil without dying. See those who have passed on. Talk to them." McGonagall's eyes widened slightly, the closest she came to showing shock. "Because of your experience in the forest during the battle?" "Partly. And because of certain objects I once possessed." He didn't need to name the Hallows, McGonagall was sharp enough to connect the dots. "I see." She was quiet for a moment. "And you believe you've lost this ability?" "I gave it up," Harry clarified. "To repair the boundary after Thorne damaged it." "A considerable sacrifice," McGonagall observed. Harry thought of his parents, of Sirius, of all those he'd left behind in the threshold. It was necessary. Yet the boundary appears to be weakening again. She studied him closely. "Could your connection to death still exist, even if you can no longer cross over?" Harry hadn't considered that. "I don't know. I haven't felt anything unusual." "Perhaps you should try," McGonagall suggested. "Not to cross over, but to sense the boundary. Your unique experience might provide insight the rest of us lack." It made sense, but Harry hesitated. 6 months of trying to move on, to live fully in the world of the living as he'd promised. Opening himself to that connection again felt like a step backward. "I'll think about it," he said finally. McGonagall nodded, accepting his reservation. "In the meantime, I suggest you all get some rest. We've arranged quarters for you, Mr. Weasley, and Ms. Granger in the guest wing." "Thank you." Harry turned to go, then paused. "Professor, if you see Dumbledore again, the apparition, ask him what he meant about threads unraveling." "I shall," McGonagall promised. "Though I suspect he was speaking to you, not me." Harry couldn't sleep. After tossing for hours in the unfamiliar bed, he gave up and slipped out into the corridors. The castle was eerily quiet, with only the occasional prefect or professor on patrol. His feet carried him automatically to the 7th floor, to the stretch of wall where the room of requirement had once existed. The fiend fire had destroyed the room during the battle, and no one had been able to access it since. Another casualty of war. Harry paced before the blank wall, not really expecting anything to happen. 1, 2, 3 passes. To his shock, a door materialized, small and plain, not like the elaborate entrances the room had provided in the past. One drawn, Harry pushed it open. Inside was a simple, circular space with a stone bench in the center. No other features, no objects, just smooth walls and dim, sourceless light. As Harry stepped inside, the door vanished behind him. Before panic could set in, he noticed he wasn't alone. A figure sat on the bench, facing away from him. Long silver hair and beard, half-moon spectacles visible in profile. Professor Dumbledore. The figure turned, and Harry found himself looking into the familiar blue eyes of his mentor. "Hello, Harry." Dumbledore's voice had the same distant quality it had in the entrance hall, like someone speaking through water. "I was hoping you would find me here." "Are you, real?" Harry asked, approaching slowly. A complicated question. Dumbledore smiled. "I am not alive, as you know. Nor am I a ghost or a portrait. Think of me as a visitor." From the threshold, Harry guessed. "Ah, so you know of it." Dumbledore looked pleased. "Yes, though I have moved beyond that waiting place myself. I've returned because something is pulling us back, all of us who have connections to this place." "The boundary is weakening again," Harry said. "More than weakening. It's being deliberately manipulated." Dumbledore's expression grew serious. Abraxas Thorne was merely the beginning. His research opened doorways that should have remained closed. "But I sealed the veil," Harry protested. "I gave up my ability to cross over." "A noble sacrifice," Dumbledore acknowledged. "And it would have been enough, had Thorne's work not been continued by others." Cold realization washed over Harry. Someone else is using his research. Indeed. Someone who understood that Thorne's approach was too direct, too forceful. They're being more subtle, creating small tears in the fabric between worlds rather than attempting to rip it apart all at once. "Who?" Harry demanded. "That, I cannot see clearly." Dumbledore looked frustrated. "Death limits one's perspective in certain ways. But I can tell you this, they're using anchors, objects with strong connections to the deceased, to create pathways." "Like Horcruxes?" Harry asked, alarmed. "No, nothing so dark. Simply objects with emotional significance, possessions, gifts, things imbued with memory and meaning. The stronger the emotional connection, the stronger the anchor." Harry's mind raced. "That's why the apparitions are appearing here, Hogwarts is full of such objects. Dumbledore's office, possessions left behind by those who died." "Precisely." Dumbledore nodded approvingly. "And with each appearance, the boundary thins further. What happens if it breaks completely?" "Chaos," Dumbledore said simply. "The dead would flood into the world of the living, but not as they were in life. Death changes us, Harry. Strips away certain constraints. Without the boundary to maintain separation, both realms would suffer. How do I stop it?" Dumbledore's form flickered slightly. "Find the anchors. Sever their connection. And most importantly, discover who is manipulating them." "But I gave up my ability to cross over," Harry said. "How am I supposed to track down objects connected to the dead?" "Did you truly give up your connection to death, Harry?" Dumbledore asked gently. "Or merely the ability to physically cross the threshold?" Before Harry could answer, Dumbledore raised a hand in warning. "My time grows short. Listen carefully. The threads that bind the living to the dead run through all magical places, but they converge at certain points. Hogwarts is one. The Department of Mysteries another. Are there others? Places of ancient power, stone circles, burial mounds, sites of great battles or magical convergence. Dumbledore was fading now, his voice growing fainter. Godric's Hollow. Stonehenge. The Forbidden Forest. Professor, wait. Harry stepped forward. How do I find these anchors? How do I identify who's behind this? Dumbledore's form had become almost transparent. Trust your connection, Harry. You are still the master of death, whether you cross the veil or not. The boundary recognizes you. And remember, follow the grief. Those who seek to manipulate the boundary are always driven by loss. With those final words, Dumbledore vanished completely, leaving Harry alone in the empty room. Let me get this straight, Ron said through a mouthful of breakfast. Dumbledore, the actual, dead Dumbledore, told you someone's creating holes in the barrier using emotionally significant objects, and we need to find them before the dead start pouring into our world. They sat in a quiet corner of the Great Hall, keeping their voices low as students filtered in for breakfast, buzzing with rumors about the previous day's apparitions. That's the gist of it, Harry confirmed. And we need to figure out who's behind it. Did Dumbledore give any hint who it might be? Hermione asked, picking at her toast. Just that they're driven by grief, like Thorne was. Harry frowned. Which doesn't narrow it down much. A lot of people lost someone in the war. We should start with the anchors, Hermione said practically. If we can find and neutralize them, we can at least slow whatever's happening while we look for the source. How do we identify an anchor? Ron asked. Dumbledore said they're objects with strong emotional connections to the dead, Harry explained. Personal possessions, gifts, things with meaning. Half of Hogwarts could qualify, Hermione pointed out. This place is full of meaningful objects. We need to focus on the locations where apparitions have appeared, Harry said. Map them, look for patterns. And we should check the Department of Mysteries, Hermione added. If someone's continuing Thorne's work, they might have accessed his research. I'll talk to Robards, Harry said. He can get us clearance. Speaking of Robards, Ron looked uncomfortable. Aren't you supposed to be on forced leave? Harry grimaced. Technically. But he can hardly complain if I'm handling a supernatural crisis that only I have experience with. I should contact Ginny, Hermione suggested. Let her know what's happening. Already did, Harry said. Sent an owl last night. She's coming here later today, says she won't be left out this time. Ron snorted. As if anyone could stop her. Their planning was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance. Students gasped and pointed as another apparition appeared, this time, Fred Weasley, strolling casually into the Great Hall as if he'd never left. Ron went pale. Fred. The apparition seemed more substantial than yesterday's, with clearer definition and color. Fred walked, or glided, directly toward their table, a familiar mischievous grin on his face. Ronnikins, the apparition said, voice echoing strangely. Still letting Hermione do all the thinking for you. Ron made a choked sound, halfway between a laugh and a sob. Fred, Harry said cautiously, do you know what's happening? Why you're here? Fred, or his echo, looked at Harry with surprising clarity. Someone's yanking on our chains, mate. Pulling us back when we should be moving on. His expression grew serious. It's not right, Harry. Even those of us who want to see you lot again know it's not right. Who's doing it? Hermione asked. Fred shook his head. Can't see them clearly from our side. Just feel the pull. He turned to Ron, softening. George doing okay? Ron swallowed hard. Better. Has good days and bad days. Tell him, Fred began, but his form suddenly flickered violently. Something's wrong. The pull's getting stronger. Around the hall, gasps rose as more apparitions began appearing, Lavender Brown, Colin Creevey, Professor Burbage. Unlike previous manifestations, they seemed distressed, their forms warping as if under pressure. Harry. Fred's voice grew urgent. They're forcing it now. Hurry. With a sound like glass shattering, all the apparitions vanished at once. The great hall fell silent for a beat before erupting into frightened chatter. That was different, Hermione said, her voice shaking slightly. They weren't just appearing, they were being pulled through. Someone's accelerating their plan, Harry said grimly. We need to move fast. By mid-morning, the situation had deteriorated further. Apparitions were appearing throughout the castle at an alarming rate, no longer just victims of the battle but former students and teachers from throughout Hogwarts' long history. Most looked confused or distressed, their forms unstable, flickering in and out of visibility. McGonagall had ordered all students confined to their common rooms while the staff attempted to contain the situation. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had set up a command center of sorts in the defense against the dark arts classroom, mapping sightings and researching potential anchors. There's definitely a pattern, Hermione said, studying their map. The appearances are concentrated around 7 specific locations in the castle. The astronomy tower, the entrance hall, the Great Hall, the 7th floor corridor, the bridge, the boathouse, and the room of requirement, Harry listed. All places where significant deaths occurred. But not just during the battle, Ron pointed out. That ghost in medieval robes definitely wasn't from our time. Historical deaths too, Hermione agreed. Places where the boundary was already thin from previous passings. A knock at the door interrupted them. Ginny entered, looking grim. It's not just Hogwarts, she announced without preamble. Dad just sent a Patronus. There are reports of apparitions all over Britain, the Ministry, Diagon Alley, even Muggle London. It's spreading, Harry realized with growing dread. Ginny crossed the room to kiss Harry briefly before taking a seat. What's the plan? We need to identify and neutralize the anchors, Hermione explained, quickly bringing Ginny up to speed. But we don't even know what they look like, Ron said frustratedly. Actually, Harry said slowly, I think I might have a way to find them. The others looked at him expectantly. Dumbledore said I still have my connection to death, even if I can't cross over anymore, Harry explained. That the boundary recognizes me. If that's true, I might be able to sense the anchors. How? Ginny asked, concern evident in her voice. I don't know exactly, Harry admitted. But I need to try. McGonagall suggested something similar, that I might be able to sense the boundary without crossing it. It's worth attempting, Hermione said cautiously. But be careful, Harry. We don't know what connecting to that energy might do to you now. Harry nodded, then closed his eyes, focusing inward. For months, he'd been suppressing any sensation related to the threshold, pushing away the whispers that occasionally reached him in dreams. Now, he deliberately opened himself to that awareness. At first, nothing happened. Then, gradually, he became aware of a subtle vibration in the air, like static electricity, but deeper, more primal. He focused on it, letting the sensation grow stronger. Harry? Ginny's voice seemed distant. I can feel it, Harry murmured. The boundary. It's trembling. Like a drum skin someone's tapping on. He stood, eyes still closed, drawn toward the sensation. It pulled him toward the classroom door. This way, he said, opening his eyes but maintaining his connection to the strange energy. The others followed as Harry moved through the corridors, guided by an invisible thread of power. Students peered curiously from behind partially open common room doors as they passed, but Harry barely noticed them, focused entirely on the pulling sensation. It led them to the trophy room, where generations of awards and mementos were displayed. Harry moved unerringly toward a particular case containing Quidditch trophies from the 1970s. There, he said, pointing to a Seeker's Award with James Potter engraved on it. The trophy seemed ordinary enough, but as Harry focused on it, he could see a subtle shimmer around it, like heat rising from pavement. That's an anchor? Ron asked skeptically. Yes, Harry confirmed. I can feel it pulling. Creating a tier, I guess. A place where the boundary is being stretched thin. How do we neutralize it? Ginny asked. Harry reached for the case, but Hermione caught his wrist. Wait, she cautioned. We don't know what direct contact might do. Let me try something first. She drew her wand and cast a containment charm around the trophy. The shimmer intensified briefly, then settled into a steady pulse. I think that's stabilizing it temporarily, Hermione said. But we need a more permanent solution. We need to disconnect it from whatever spell is using it as an anchor, Harry said, somehow knowing this was true. Break its emotional resonance. By destroying it? Ginny asked, looking troubled. No, Harry shook his head. That might make things worse. We need to release it, somehow. An idea struck him. I need to touch it. Harry, Hermione began. I know what I'm doing, Harry insisted. My connection to death is different. I might be able to sever the tie without damaging the boundary further. Reluctantly, Hermione removed the containment charm. Harry reached into the case and grasped the trophy. Immediately, a jolt of energy ran through him, not painful, but intense, like plunging into ice water. Images flashed before his eyes, his father as a teenager, grinning as he was presented with the trophy, the award being placed in this very case, years passing as students stopped to look at it, and then, recently, someone stopping, placing a hand on the glass, whispering words Harry couldn't quite catch. Harry focused on that connection, on the thread of power running from the trophy to wherever his father's spirit resided. Not severing it completely, that felt wrong, but gently loosening it, like untying a knot rather than cutting the rope. The energy surged, then ebbed. The shimmer around the trophy faded, leaving it looking perfectly ordinary once more. Harry released it, feeling slightly dizzy but triumphant. It worked. The anchor's neutralized. That's one down, Ron said. How many more do you think there are? Dozens, maybe hundreds, Harry admitted. Anywhere people have strong emotional connections to the dead. We can't possibly find and neutralize all of them, Hermione said worriedly. Not quickly enough to stop whatever's happening. No, Harry agreed. We need to find the source. Whoever's activating these anchors in the first place. And how do we do that? Ginny asked. Harry thought of Dumbledore's final advice. We follow the grief. They split up to cover more ground, each taking one of the key locations where apparitions had been concentrated. Harry headed for the astronomy tower, where Dumbledore had died. The tower was eerily quiet, with no students or apparitions in sight. Harry climbed the spiral staircase slowly, senses alert for any sign of the boundary's disturbance. At the top, the open platform where Dumbledore had fallen was bathed in afternoon sunlight. Harry approached the railing cautiously, feeling the familiar twist of grief and guilt that always accompanied memories of that night. He closed his eyes, opening himself again to the boundary's energy. It was stronger here, a persistent vibration that seemed to emanate from the very stones. I wondered if you'd figure it out. Harry's eyes snapped open. Standing across the platform was a woman he vaguely recognized, tall, thin, with streaks of gray in her dark hair. It took him a moment to place her, Penelope Clearwater, Percy's ex-girlfriend who now worked in the Department of Mysteries. Penelope. Harry kept his voice neutral, though his hand moved toward his wand. What are you doing here? The same as you, I imagine. She gestured to the surrounding air. Feeling the boundary weaken. It's beautiful, isn't it? Like watching a wall of ice melt in spring. Harry tensed. You're behind this. You've been activating the anchors. Penelope smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Activating, yes. Creating, no. The anchors have always existed, anywhere people leave pieces of themselves behind. I'm simply amplifying them. Why? Harry demanded, though he already suspected the answer. Why does anyone tamper with the boundary, Potter? Her voice hardened. Because someone I loved is on the wrong side of it. Your brother, Harry remembered suddenly. He died in the First War. Marcus. Penelope's expression softened briefly. He was 7. I was 5. Death Eaters attacked our home because my father refused to join them. Her eyes hardened again. I've spent my entire life studying ways to reach him again. Thorne's research, Harry guessed. You continued it after he was arrested. Abraxas was on the right track, but too impatient, too obvious. Penelope paced the platform, her movements precise and controlled. He tried to tear the barrier down all at once. I'm being more methodical. By creating hundreds of small tiers instead of one big one, Harry said. Using objects connected to the dead as anchor points. Exactly. She looked almost impressed. Each anchor creates a tiny pathway, not enough for full crossing, but enough for echoes to bleed through. With enough anchors activated simultaneously, the entire boundary collapses, Harry finished grimly. You're trying to do exactly what Thorne attempted, just more slowly. More effectively, Penelope corrected. And it's already working. The dead are returning, Potter. Soon, the separation will end entirely. That's not how it works, Harry said, taking a step toward her. The boundary exists for a reason. Destroying it won't bring your brother back, not really. Penelope's face hardened. You don't understand. You, who walked through the veil and back. Who spoke with your dead whenever you pleased. Harry froze. How do you know about that? The Department of Mysteries monitors the veil constantly, Penelope said. We detected your crossings. Thorne wasn't the only one studying you, Potter. Then you know I gave it up, Harry said. To repair the boundary Thorne damaged. A waste, Penelope scoffed. You had a gift few could imagine, and you surrendered it out of fear. Not fear, Harry corrected. Understanding. The dead and the living aren't meant to coexist this way. Says who? Penelope's voice rose slightly. Ancient taboos. Department policy. I reject that limitation. Death should not be final. Penelope, Harry said gently, I've spoken with those who've passed on. They find peace. Your brother has moved beyond suffering. You don't know that, she snapped. You never met Marcus. No, Harry acknowledged. But I know that what you're doing is causing harm, to both the living and the dead. Those apparitions aren't happy, Penelope. They're distressed, being pulled back against their will. Doubt flickered across her face, quickly suppressed. Initial disorientation. Once the boundary is gone completely, chaos, Harry interrupted. Dumbledore himself warned me. Without the natural separation, both realms suffer. Penelope's expression hardened. Dumbledore. Always Dumbledore, even from beyond the grave. Tell me, Potter, did he mention that he studied the veil himself? That he deliberately kept knowledge of boundary crossings restricted to maintain his own power over life and death? Harry hesitated. What are you talking about? Check the department archives, Penelope challenged. Dumbledore suppressed research into boundary magic for decades. He didn't want anyone else to have the power he coveted for himself. That's not true, Harry said, though a seed of doubt took root. Dumbledore had always kept secrets, had always believed some knowledge was too dangerous to share freely. Isn't it? Penelope laughed bitterly. Why do you think information about the veil is so limited? Why the department keeps it under such tight control? Dumbledore arranged it all, long before either of us was born. Harry pushed the doubt aside. Whatever Dumbledore's past actions, the current crisis was clear. This has to stop, Penelope. The apparitions are appearing all over Britain now. People are frightened. They won't be frightened when they understand, she insisted. When they see their loved ones again, they'll celebrate. Those aren't really your loved ones, Harry argued. They're echoes, fragments pulled through against their will. Even if you succeed, they won't be the people you remember. Penelope's hand moved to her pocket, withdrawing a small, worn stuffed rabbit. This was Marcus's. He carried it everywhere. Her voice softened. I've seen him, Potter. When the anchor activated, I saw my brother just as he was. An echo, Harry repeated gently. A memory-given form, not Marcus himself. Anger flashed in Penelope's eyes. You're a hypocrite. You visited your parents, your godfather, used your ability for your own comfort. Now you deny that comfort to others. I was wrong, Harry admitted. I was hiding in the past instead of living in the present. It took me too long to understand that. How noble, Penelope sneered. Well, I'm not interested in your enlightenment. The process has already begun, and it cannot be stopped. She raised her wand, pointing it at the stuffed rabbit. This is just one of hundreds of anchors I've activated across Britain. The solstice is tomorrow, Potter. When the sun reaches its zenith, the final ritual will complete, and the boundary will dissolve permanently. Harry drew his wand. I can't let that happen. You can't stop it, Penelope said confidently. Even if you neutralize this anchor, even if you arrest me, the process will continue. The ritual is self-sustaining now. Then help me stop it, Harry urged. Tell me how to reverse it. Your brother wouldn't want this, Penelope. No one who's passed on wants to be dragged back. Something flickered in Penelope's eyes, doubt, perhaps, or recognition of truth in Harry's words. But before she could respond, a disturbance rippled through the air around them. The boundary vibrated visibly now, the air shimmering like heat waves. Ghostly figures began to materialize around the tower platform, students, teachers, figures from throughout Hogwarts history, appearing and disappearing in rapid succession. It's accelerating, Penelope whispered, looking shocked. This shouldn't be happening yet. You've lost control of it, Harry realized. The tears are spreading on their own now. Penelope stared at the stuffed rabbit in her hand, her confidence visibly faltering. This isn't right. They shouldn't be forced through this way. Help me stop it, Harry said again, urgently. Before it's too late. The tower shuddered as the magical disturbance intensified. Apparitions flickered in and out of existence more rapidly, their forms distorted, faces twisted in confusion or pain. Penelope looked around in growing horror. This isn't what I wanted. They're suffering. I know, Harry said softly. That's what I've been trying to tell you. She met his eyes, her own filled with conflicting emotions. I just wanted to see him again. To know he was okay. I understand, Harry said, and he truly did. But this isn't the way. Penelope's shoulders slumped. The ritual is centered at Stonehenge. That's where the boundary is thinnest naturally. I've placed the master anchor there, a convergence point for all the others. How do we stop it? The master anchor needs to be neutralized at the exact center of Stonehenge, Penelope explained. But not by just anyone. It would require someone with a natural connection to the boundary. Someone like the Master of Death, Harry guessed. Penelope nodded. It has to be you, Potter. Only you can undo what I've done. What's the master anchor? Penelope hesitated, then reached into her robes and withdrew a locket. This. It contains a lock of Marcus's hair and mine, bound together. The ultimate emotional connection. She held it out, and Harry took it carefully. The moment his fingers touched the metal, he felt the power radiating from it, far stronger than the trophy he'd neutralized earlier. There isn't much time, Penelope said, looking at the chaos of apparitions around them. The boundary is unraveling faster than I anticipated. By sunset, it might be too late. You're coming with me, Harry said firmly. To make sure this works. Penelope nodded, resigned. I'll help you. I never wanted to cause suffering, Potter. I just wanted my brother back. Harry's expression softened slightly. I know the feeling. News of the accelerating crisis had spread quickly. By the time Harry and Penelope, now in magical restraints, returned to the defense classroom, Ron, Hermione, and Ginny had been joined by McGonagall, Kingsley Shacklebolt and a team of Aurors and Unspeakables. Potter, explain, Kingsley demanded as they entered. Harry quickly briefed them on what he'd learned from Penelope and the plan to neutralize the master anchor at Stonehenge. Can we trust her? Kingsley asked, eyeing Penelope warily. I think so, Harry said. She didn't expect the boundary to deteriorate this quickly. She's scared too. The apparitions are appearing everywhere now, one of the Unspeakables reported. We have reports from as far away as Hogsmeade and Godric's Hollow. Why Stonehenge? Hermione asked Penelope directly. Why center the ritual there? It's one of the original crossing points, Penelope explained, her academic nature showing despite the circumstances. Before the Ministry, before the Department of Mysteries, ancient wizards used sites like Stonehenge to communicate with the dead during certain celestial alignments. The summer solstice, Hermione realized. That's tomorrow. Yes, Penelope confirmed. I timed the ritual to culminate at the solstice's peak. The boundary would be naturally thinner then, requiring less force to dissolve completely. But it's destabilizing prematurely, McGonagall observed. Penelope nodded, looking troubled. The anchors are creating a cascade effect I didn't anticipate. Each tear weakens the surrounding barrier, which accelerates the formation of new tiers. We need to move now, Harry said decisively. Before it gets worse. I'll accompany you, Kingsley stated. Along with a team of Aurors and Unspeakables. No, Harry and Penelope said simultaneously. Too many people might disrupt the neutralization process, Penelope explained. Especially those without a natural connection to death. It needs to be Potter, primarily. I'm going too, Ginny said firmly, in a tone that brooked no argument. Harry nodded, knowing better than to object. Ron and Hermione as well. We've dealt with this kind of magic before. And me, Penelope added. I created the master anchor. I need to help deactivate it. Kingsley looked displeased but nodded. The rest of us will work on containing the apparitions and preventing panic. The Muggle Prime Minister has already been notified, they're attributing the sightings to mass hallucination from a gas leak. That won't hold for long, Hermione pointed out. No, Kingsley agreed grimly. So move quickly. They spent the next hour preparing, gathering supplies and information. Hermione researched Stonehenge's magical properties while Ron coordinated with Aurors stationed around Britain. Ginny contacted her family, ensuring they were safe and informed. Harry found himself drawn to a window overlooking the grounds. Outside, the situation was deteriorating visibly. Apparitions flickered in and out of existence across the lawns, former students, teachers, even creatures from the Forbidden Forest. Most appeared confused, some distressed. A few seemed aware enough to recognize their surroundings, looking around in bewilderment before fading away again. It's getting worse, Penelope said softly, coming to stand beside him. Though still in restraints, she'd been allowed limited movement to assist with preparations. You really thought this would bring peace? Harry asked. Seeing them like this? Penelope's gaze fixed on a particular apparition, a small boy in old-fashioned clothes playing near the lake. That's him. Marcus. Harry followed her gaze. The boy appeared more solid than most of the apparitions, running and laughing as he tossed stones into the water. He seemed unaware of his surroundings, caught in a memory rather than truly present. He doesn't even see me, Penelope whispered, voice breaking. It's just an echo, like you said. I'm sorry, Harry said genuinely. I know what it's like to want someone back so badly you'd do anything. At least you got to speak with them, Penelope said without accusation, just sadness. To know they were at peace. They are, Harry assured her. All of them. And they wouldn't want to be pulled back like this. The boy's apparition flickered and vanished, leaving Penelope staring at the empty space. Let's fix this, she said quietly. Before I cause any more harm. They arrived at Stonehenge as the sun began to set, using a ministry port key to bypass the Muggle security measures. The ancient stone circle stood empty, a special containment team having evacuated all visitors due to the gas leak earlier in the day. Even without his heightened sensitivity to the boundary, Harry would have felt the power of this place. The air thrummed with magical energy, making his skin prickle and his teeth vibrate slightly. The massive stones seemed to glow from within, pulsing in rhythm with the disturbances rippling through the air. Apparitions appeared and disappeared among the stones, ancient druids, medieval wizards, more recent figures, all flickering in and out of visibility like badly tuned television stations. It's worse than I expected, Penelope said, her face pale. The cascade effect has accelerated exponentially. What exactly do we need to do? Hermione asked, her practical nature asserting itself despite the surreal surroundings. Penelope pointed to the center of the stone circle. The master anchor needs to be neutralized there, at the convergence point of the ley lines. Potter must be the one to break the connection, using his affinity with death. And how exactly do I do that? Harry asked. Focus on the natural boundary between worlds, Penelope instructed. Not destroying it, but restoring it. The locket contains paired life essences, my hair and Marcus's, creating an unnatural connection across the boundary. You need to separate them, gently, respecting both sides of the threshold. Harry nodded, fingering the locket in his pocket. And the other anchors? Once the master anchor is neutralized, the others should deactivate automatically, Penelope explained. They're linked in a network, all drawing power from the master. Should? Ron repeated skeptically. It's theoretical, Penelope admitted. This exact ritual has never been attempted before. Comforting, Ginny muttered. They made their way toward the center of the circle, moving carefully through the shifting apparitions. Most took no notice of them, but occasionally one would turn and stare, recognition flickering in ethereal eyes before fading away. At the center of Stonehenge, the magical disturbance was strongest. The air itself seemed to bend and warp, reality flickering like a faulty light. Harry felt the boundary between worlds stretched paper-thin here, barely containing the pressure from both sides. Now what? He asked, raising his voice over the growing supernatural wind that whipped around the stones. Penelope knelt on the ground, her bound hands awkward but determined. Draw a circle with your wand, 13 feet in diameter, centered here. Harry complied, tracing a glowing line in the grass. As the circle completed, the magic within it shifted, becoming calmer, more focused. Now place the locket at the exact center, Penelope instructed. Harry withdrew the locket carefully. It pulsed with power, warm in his hand. He placed it gently on the ground at the center of the circle. What next? He asked. You need to connect with the boundary, Penelope said. Like you did to find the anchor at Hogwarts, but deeper. You need to feel both sides, living and dead, simultaneously. Harry took a deep breath and closed his eyes, opening himself to the boundary's energy as he had in the trophy room. This time, the sensation was overwhelming, not just a vibration but a roaring current, like standing in a river that flowed in two directions at once. I can feel it, he said, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. It's torn. Fraying. Focus on healing it, Penelope urged. On restoring the natural separation. Harry concentrated on the boundary, visualizing it as a veil, not solid and impenetrable, but flowing, permeable in the right circumstances, yet still a necessary division. He thought of what Dumbledore had said, of what his parents and Sirius had taught him in the threshold. Life and death, separate but connected, each with its purpose. As his awareness deepened, he began to sense individual tiers in the boundary, hundreds of them, scattered across Britain, each centered on an anchor object. And connecting them all, pulsing with dark energy, was the locket at his feet. "It's working," Hermione said excitedly from somewhere nearby. "The apparitions are stabilizing." Harry couldn't see with his eyes closed, but he could feel it, the wild fluctuations in the boundary beginning to calm, the tiers starting to mend. But the locket remained a problem, a knot of conflicting energies that refused to untangle. "Something's wrong," he said. "The locket, it's resisting. The connection is too strong," Penelope's voice came, closer now. "I bound it with blood magic as well as emotional ties. You need more power." Harry pushed harder, drawing on his connection as Master of Death, but the locket's resistance only grew. "It's not enough," he gasped, sweat beading on his forehead from the effort. "Harry." Ginny's hand found his, warm and solid. "Let us help." Ron's hand grasped his other shoulder. "Together, mate." Hermione's hand joined them. Like always. Harry felt their presence anchoring him to the living world even as he reached toward the boundary. Their love and friendship, their shared history of facing impossible odds, it strengthened him, giving him something the locket didn't have, connections freely given, not forced or bound by magic. "One more," he said, opening his eyes briefly to look at Penelope. "You created this. Help me undo it." Penelope hesitated, then stepped forward, placing her bound hands on the connection where the others met. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she whispered. "Be at peace." Power surged through their joined hands, flowing into Harry and through him to the boundary. With newfound strength, he focused again on the locket, seeing now not just the magical binding but the emotional one, Penelope's desperate love for her brother, her grief at his loss, her refusal to let go. "Let him go," Harry said gently. "Not forever. Just until it's time." A sob escaped Penelope, but he felt her resistance crumble, felt her finally release the grief she'd held for so long. The locket shuddered, then split open. Inside, two locks of hair, one dark like Penelope's, one fair, lay intertwined. As they watched, the hairs gently separated, no longer bound together. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A pulse of energy radiated outward from the locket, rippling across the boundary between worlds. The apparitions surrounding them flickered one final time, their forms growing transparent, expressions shifting from confusion to clarity. Among them, Harry glimpsed familiar faces, Dumbledore, nodding in approval, Fred, offering a salute, Lupin and Tonks, hands clasped together, and briefly, so briefly he might have imagined it, his parents, smiling with pride. Then, like mist before the morning sun, all the apparitions faded away, returning to their proper place beyond the boundary. The magical disturbance calmed, the unnatural wind dying down to nothing. The stones of Stonehenge stopped glowing, returning to their ancient, silent watch. At Harry's feet, the locket lay open, the two locks of hair now separated but still preserved, a memory without a binding. "It's done," Hermione said softly. "The boundary is restored." Harry nodded, feeling the truth of it in his bones. The tears had healed, the anchors deactivated. The natural order had reasserted itself. Penelope knelt beside the locket, tears streaming down her face. "I felt him," she whispered. "At the end. He was peaceful. Free. That's how they all are," Harry said gently. "Not gone forever. Just, waiting in the right place." "I understand now," Penelope said, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Why you gave up your ability to cross over. Why the boundary matters." Harry helped her to her feet. "We carry them with us," he said, thinking of all those he'd lost, all those he'd spoken with in the threshold. "In memory, in love. That's how it's supposed to be." Ginny's hand found his again, squeezing gently. Ron and Hermione moved closer, the four of them standing together as twilight deepened around Stonehenge. What happens now? Ron asked, looking at Penelope. That's up to the Wisengamot, Harry said, though without harshness. But I'll speak for her. She helped us in the end. Penelope accepted this with a nod, her eyes still on the locket. May I keep this? Not to use again, just to remember. Harry considered, then picked up the locket, closing it gently. As a memento only, he said, handing it back to her. The connection is broken now anyway. Thank you, she whispered, cradling it carefully. As Aurors began to arrive to secure the scene, Harry took a moment to look up at the darkening sky. Somewhere beyond that boundary, those he loved were at peace, moving forward in their own journey as he moved forward in his. For the first time since giving up his ability to cross over, he felt truly at peace with that separation. It wasn't a wall but a veil, thin enough for love to pass through, thick enough to maintain the necessary distance between life and death. Ready to go home? Ginny asked beside him. Harry smiled, taking her hand more firmly in his. Yeah. I am. In the days that followed, the magical community slowly recovered from what the Daily Prophet dubbed the ghostly incursion. Theories abounded, from failed Department of Mysteries experiments to aftereffects of Voldemort's defeat. The Ministry, under Kingsley's leadership, released a carefully worded statement acknowledging a temporary disturbance in magical energies that had been successfully contained. The Muggle world, predictably, explained away the apparitions as mass hallucination, optical illusions, or elaborate hoaxes. Penelope Clearwater faced the Wisengamot, charged with magical tampering and endangerment. Harry testified on her behalf, explaining how she had ultimately helped repair the damage she'd caused. Her sentence was relatively lenient, 5 years in a minimum security wing of Azkaban, followed by a lifetime ban from the Department of Mysteries. For Harry, the aftermath brought unexpected clarity. The experience had forced him to confront his relationship with death once more, to fully accept what it meant to be connected to both worlds without crossing between them. 2 weeks after the Stonehenge incident, he sat in the garden of Grimmauld Place with Ginny, enjoying a rare peaceful evening. The house, once dark and oppressive, had slowly transformed under their care into something approaching a home. I got the time off approved, Harry said, passing Ginny a butterbeer. 2 weeks in Romania starting next month. Charlie's thrilled, Ginny replied, grinning. Says he'll show us the new Ironbelly hatchlings. As long as he doesn't expect me to ride one, Harry said with mock seriousness. I've had enough of dragons to last a lifetime. Ginny laughed, leaning back in her chair to look at the stars appearing overhead. So, Robards is officially off your back. For now, Harry confirmed. Solving a national supernatural crisis apparently earns you some goodwill, even from Robards. Who would have thought? Ginny's tone was light, but her eyes were perceptive as always. How are you really doing? With everything? Harry considered the question, taking a sip of his butterbeer. Better, he said finally. I think. I needed this, in a way. To see that the boundary is necessary. That it's okay for them to be where they are, and for me to be here. Without being able to visit whenever you want, Ginny observed. Yeah. Harry looked up at the stars, thinking of those beyond them. I used the crossings as a crutch, I think. A way to avoid dealing with loss. This forced me to accept it properly. Ginny reached over to take his hand. They'd be proud of you, you know. For letting go. I know, Harry said, and he meant it. They told me as much, that last time. That living fully here was the best way to honor them. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the cool evening air and each other's company. Do you ever regret it? Ginny asked eventually. Giving up your ability to cross over? Harry thought about it. Sometimes, he admitted. In weak moments. When I miss them so much it hurts. But then I remember what they said, that they're not gone, not really. Just, waiting. And in the meantime? Ginny prompted. Harry squeezed her hand, looking at her, really looking at her, the woman who'd fought beside him, waited for him, never given up on him even when he was half living between worlds. In the meantime, he said, I have a lot of living to do. The smile that bloomed across Ginny's face was worth every sacrifice, every goodbye he'd ever said. Later that night, as Ginny slept beside him, Harry dreamed, not of the threshold this time, but of a future filled with possibility. Children with Weasley red hair and Potter eyes. A home filled with laughter. A life fully lived. And somewhere beyond the veil, those he loved watched over him, not with sadness for the separation, but with joy for the journey he was making. The journey they'd always wanted for him. The Master of Death, finally embracing life. Chapter 3, Between Two Worlds. Harry woke to screaming. He bolted upright in bed, wand already in hand, heart hammering against his ribs. Beside him, Ginny was doing the same, her reflexes honed by years of Quidditch and one brutal war. What the hell, she whispered. The screaming continued, high, terrified, and unmistakably coming from inside Grimmauld Place. Harry was already moving, feet hitting the cold floor as he rushed toward the door. Stay behind me, he said, though he knew Ginny would ignore him. They crept down the hallway toward the source of the screams, Creature's small room off the kitchen. The door stood ajar, soft light spilling out. Creature. Harry called cautiously. The screaming stopped abruptly. Then came a different sound, sobbing, broken and desperate. Harry pushed the door open fully. Inside, Creature cowered in the corner of his nest-like bed, bony hands covering his face. And standing in the center of the small room was the ghostly figure of Regulus Black. Master Regulus, Creature moaned. Creature failed you. Creature is sorry, so sorry. The apparition of Regulus looked confused, his form more solid than the apparitions Harry had seen at Hogwarts and Stonehenge. He turned toward Harry, recognition dawning in his eyes. Potter, he said, voice distant yet clear. Something's wrong. I was, beyond. Now I'm being pulled back. Harry felt ice in his veins. It had been 3 months since the incident at Stonehenge. 3 months of peace, of normalcy, of believing the boundary had been restored. This isn't possible, Ginny whispered beside him. We fixed it. Regulus's form flickered, pain crossing his features. Others are being pulled too. Something's breaking through, from your side. Who? Harry demanded. Who's doing this? Can't see clearly, Regulus winced. But they're using the old magic. Blood magic. Older than the Ministry, older than, his form shuddered violently. Find the Hallows. All 3. Only way to, with a sound like shattering glass, Regulus vanished, leaving Creature whimpering in the corner and Harry and Ginny staring at the empty space. It's starting again, Harry said grimly. Dawn found them in the kitchen, mugs of strong tea cooling on the table as they waited. Harry had sent Patronus messages to Ron and Hermione immediately, and owls to Kingsley and McGonagall. If apparitions were returning, they needed to act quickly. Creature says Regulus appeared just after midnight, Harry told Ginny, pacing the length of the kitchen. Said he spoke of others being called back against their will. But who's doing it this time? Ginny asked. Thorne's still in Azkaban. Penelope too. I don't know, Harry admitted. But whoever it is, they're using blood magic according to Regulus. And he mentioned the Hallows. Ginny's expression darkened. The Deathly Hallows? I thought you got rid of them. Not all of them, Harry said. I kept the cloak, family heirloom. The stone I dropped in the forest. And the wand. You returned it to Dumbledore's tomb, Ginny finished. Harry nodded. But someone could have found the stone. And the tomb could have been disturbed again. The fireplace flared green before Ginny could respond. Ron and Hermione tumbled out, both looking like they'd dressed in a hurry. We came as soon as we got your message, Hermione said, brushing soot from her jumper. An apparition, here. Regulus Black, Harry confirmed. Solid, aware, and in pain from being pulled back. Ron dropped into a chair. Bloody hell. I thought we sorted all this at Stonehenge. Apparently not, Harry said grimly. Something new is happening. Regulus mentioned blood magic and the Hallows. Hermione's eyes widened. Blood magic? That's some of the most powerful, most regulated magic there is. The Ministry has strict controls, someone's obviously not following regulations, Ginny cut in. What about the Department of Mysteries? Ron asked. Any unusual activity there? Harry shook his head. I checked with Robards before you arrived. The Veil is being monitored constantly since the Thorne incident. No disturbances reported. So it's not coming from the Veil this time, Hermione mused. But another access point? Or a completely different method of weakening the boundary, Harry suggested. The fireplace flared green again, and Kingsley stepped through, looking grave in his minister's robes. Potter, he nodded in greeting. We have reports of 17 apparition sightings since midnight. All across Britain. Harry's stomach dropped. 17. In just a few hours. All individuals deceased within the last decade, Kingsley continued. All appeared solid, aware, and in distress at being pulled back. Just like Regulus, Ginny said. Kingsley nodded. The Department of Mysteries is on high alert, but they're as baffled as we are. The Veil shows no signs of disturbance. Regulus mentioned blood magic, Harry said. And the Hallows. Said we need to find all three. Kingsley's expression darkened. Blood magic is ancient and dangerous. If someone is using it to manipulate the boundary between worlds. We need to find them, Harry finished. Fast. There's more, Kingsley said hesitantly. One of the apparitions was able to communicate more clearly than the others. Alastor Moody. Harry straightened. Moody? What did he say? That something is attempting to use the dead as anchors to fully manifest in our world, Kingsley replied. Not just weakening the boundary or allowing the dead to return, but bringing something else through. Something else? Ron repeated. Like what? Moody didn't know, Kingsley said. Or couldn't say. But he was afraid, Potter. I've never seen Alastor Moody afraid of anything. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. If something could frighten Mad-Eye Moody even in death, they were facing a threat beyond anything they'd encountered before. The Hallows, Hermione said suddenly. If Regulus specifically mentioned them, they must be crucial. I have the cloak, Harry said. The stone is lost in the Forbidden Forest. And the wand is in Dumbledore's tomb. Or should be. We need to check, Kingsley decided. Immediately. If someone is attempting to unite the Hallows for some dark purpose. He didn't need to finish the sentence. They all remembered the last wizard who had sought the Hallows' power. I'll go to Hogwarts, Harry said. Check the tomb and search the forest for the stone. I'll come with you, Ginny said firmly. And us, Ron added, gesturing to himself and Hermione. Kingsley nodded. I'll coordinate the Ministry response to the apparitions and alert the unspeakables about the blood magic angle. Be careful, all of you. Whatever we're facing, it's powerful enough to manipulate the boundary between life and death. After Kingsley left, they quickly prepared to depart for Hogwarts. Harry retrieved the invisibility cloak from its hiding place, the familiar silky material flowing through his fingers like water. 1/3 of what we need, he murmured. Harry, Hermione said carefully. If we do find all three Hallows, what then? Harry met her concerned gaze. Regulus seemed to think they're the key to stopping whatever's happening. Beyond that, I don't know. The Master of Death, Ron said quietly. That's what uniting them makes you, right? Supposedly, Harry replied. Though I'm not sure what that truly means. You gave up your ability to cross the veil, Ginny reminded him. If the Hallows restore that power. I'll do what's necessary, Harry said firmly. To protect both worlds. Whatever that takes. Hogwarts stood peaceful in the morning light as they approached from Hogsmeade, showing no signs of the supernatural crisis unfolding across Britain. But as they neared the gates, they saw McGonagall waiting for them, her expression grim. Potter, she greeted them. Miss Granger, Mr. Weasley, Ms. Weasley. I received your message. The situation is more serious than you know. More apparitions here. Harry guessed as they walked toward the castle. 5 since dawn, McGonagall confirmed. Including Severus Snape. Harry nearly stumbled. Snape? Did he say anything? Only that it was searching for the Hallows, McGonagall replied. He seemed to be in considerable pain before he vanished. We need to check Dumbledore's tomb, Harry said urgently. And the forest, for the resurrection stone. McGonagall nodded. I've already dispatched Hagrid to search the area where you encountered you-know-who during the battle. They hurried toward the white marble tomb by the lake. As they approached, Harry's sense of dread deepened. The tomb looked intact, but something felt wrong, a disturbance in the air around it, like the static before a lightning strike. Someone's been here, Hermione said, drawing her wand. Harry approached cautiously, examining the marble surface. No obvious signs of tampering, but when he placed his hand on the tomb, he felt it, residual magic, dark and old. They've been inside, he said. Recently. With a complex motion of her wand, McGonagall unsealed the tomb. The marble slab slid aside, revealing Dumbledore's body, perfectly preserved, hands folded over his chest. Empty hands. The wand is gone, Harry confirmed grimly. Could it be Ministry inspectors? Ron suggested without much hope. No, McGonagall said firmly. No one has authorization to disturb this tomb. Not even the minister himself. So someone has the Elder Wand, Ginny said. That's one Hallow accounted for, in the wrong hands. Harry's reply was cut off by the arrival of Hagrid, striding toward them with purpose, something clutched in his massive hand. Found this, he said without preamble, holding out a small object. Right where you said to look, Professor McGonagall. The resurrection stone lay in Hagrid's palm, its cracked surface dull in the morning light. The symbol of the Deathly Hallows was barely visible, worn by time and elements. That's two, Ron murmured. Harry stared at the stone, remembering the last time he'd held it, walking to what he believed was his death in the forest. The spirits of his parents, Sirius, and Lupin had accompanied him, giving him courage for the final confrontation with Voldemort. Why would the stone still be there if someone's collecting the Hallows? Hermione wondered. Maybe they couldn't find it, Ginny suggested. Or maybe, Harry said slowly, they left it there deliberately. As bait. The realization hit them all simultaneously. Hagrid's eyes widened as he looked down at the stone in his hand. It's a trap, Harry said, just as a pulse of magic erupted from the stone. A shockwave knocked them all backward, Harry landing hard on the grass several feet away. As he scrambled to his feet, he saw a swirling vortex of energy surrounding the stone, which had fallen from Hagrid's hand. The air around the stone rippled and tore, creating what looked like a miniature version of the veil. Through it, Harry glimpsed the familiar grey landscape of the threshold, but darker somehow, corrupted. A figure was pushing through the tier, tall, hooded, with long fingers that grasped the edges of reality itself, pulling them apart to widen the opening. Stop it! Harry shouted, firing a stunning spell that passed harmlessly through the apparition. The figure paused, turning toward Harry. Though he couldn't see a face beneath the hood, he felt its attention like a physical weight. Harry Potter, a voice whispered, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. The boy who died and returned. How convenient that you've brought the final Hallow to me. Harry clutched the invisibility cloak tighter. "Who are you?" A sound like distant laughter echoed across the grounds. "I have been called many names through the centuries. Death. The ferryman. The end. But names are irrelevant. I am the balance that you and others have disrupted." "You're trying to break through into our world," Harry accused. "Using blood magic, forcing spirits back against their will." "Correction," the figure said. "I am restoring order. The boundary between worlds has been weakened too many times, by Thorne, by Clearwater, by you, Master of Death. Such violations cannot continue." "So you're, what? Punishing us by destroying the boundary completely?" Ginny demanded, moving to stand beside Harry. "Not destroying. Removing." The figure's voice grew stronger as more of it pushed through the tear. "There should be no boundary. No separation. Life and death should flow together, as they did in the beginning." "That would cause chaos," Hermione argued, helping McGonagall to her feet. "Both realms would collapse." "Change is often perceived as chaos by limited minds," the figure dismissed. "The Hallows are the key, created from my essence, capable of bridging worlds. With them, the artificial boundary can be dissolved permanently." Harry's mind raced. This entity, whatever it truly was, sought to eliminate the boundary between worlds entirely. Not just allowing crossings or communication, but merging the realms of the living and the dead into one. "The spirits I've seen," Harry said. "They're in pain. They don't want to be pulled back." "Temporary discomfort during transition," the figure said dispassionately. "They will adjust to the new reality." "This isn't right," Harry insisted. "Death is meant to be a journey forward, not a return." The figure seemed to grow larger, the tear in reality widening. "You presume to lecture me on the nature of death, Harry Potter. I who have guided souls since time immemorial." "If you truly guided souls," Harry countered, "you'd respect their journey. Not force them back for your purposes." The figure paused, its attention now fully on Harry. "You are unexpected. Most mortals fear me, avoid me, or seek to overcome me. Few challenge my understanding." "I've met death before," Harry said simply. "It's not something to fear or fight, just a natural part of the journey." "Pretty words," the figure said, its tone hardening. "Yet you have defied death repeatedly. Survived when you should have perished. Walked between worlds as if you owned them both." "I gave that up," Harry reminded it. "To respect the boundary." "Too late," the figure hissed. "The damage was done. The boundary weakened. Now it must be removed entirely to prevent further violations." With shocking speed, the figure thrust a skeletal hand through the tear, reaching for the invisibility cloak in Harry's grasp. Harry leapt backward, but not before feeling a cold unlike anything he'd ever experienced, beyond freezing, beyond pain, the absolute absence of life itself. "The Hallows are mine by right," the entity declared. "Created from my essence, scattered by human greed. Return what is mine, and your transition will be painless." "These aren't yours to take," Harry said, wrapping the cloak more securely around his arm. "And we're not letting you destroy the boundary." The figure seemed to grow, darkness spreading from the tear around it. "You cannot stop what has already begun. The blood ritual is nearly complete, hundreds of anchors activated across your world, each drawing on the life essence of those who seek to call back their dead." Harry exchanged alarmed glances with the others. "What blood ritual?" "The willing sacrifice of life energy," the figure explained, almost gloating now. "All those grieving humans, offering their blood, their tears, their very life force to see their loved ones again. Each small offering creates another tear. Together, they will allow me full passage." Hermione gasped. "The memorial services. The 3-year anniversary of the battle is next week. People have been gathering at monuments, leaving offerings, blood offerings," McGonagall realized. "Tears mixed with blood, an ancient form of summoning magic. Precisely, the figure confirmed. Humans are so predictably sentimental. Their grief makes them vulnerable, malleable. A whispered suggestion here, an ancient text discovered there. You've been manipulating people, Harry said angrily. Encouraging blood offerings to weaken the boundary. I merely provided the means. The desperation was already there. The figure reached further through the tear, its form becoming more solid with each passing moment. Now, the Hallows. Give them to me willingly, or I shall take them by force. Harry felt a tug on the cloak, a magical pull trying to wrench it from his grasp. Around them, the air grew colder as more tears began appearing, small rifts in reality through which glimpses of the threshold could be seen. We need to close these tears, Hermione shouted, already casting containment charms that seemed to have minimal effect. The stone, Harry said suddenly. It's the focal point. We need to neutralize it. Without waiting for a response, Harry lunged toward the resurrection stone, still lying on the ground at the center of the largest tear. The entity shrieked in rage, black tendrils of energy lashing out to stop him. Harry! Ginny cried in warning. Harry dodged the first tendril, but another caught him across the chest, sending him flying backward. The cold that spread from the point of contact was beyond physical, it reached into his soul, draining hope and warmth. Fools, the entity hissed. You cannot fight death itself. Maybe not, Ron shouted, helping Harry up. But we can bloody well try. Together, they fired spells at the entity, stunning spells, binding charms, even patron uses that briefly pushed back the encroaching darkness. But their magic seemed to pass through the figure or be absorbed by it. Physical attacks won't work, Hermione realized. It's not fully corporeal yet. The stone, Harry repeated, shaking off the lingering cold. If we can destroy or neutralize it, Potter, McGonagall interrupted, her voice urgent. Your connection to death, can you use it? As you did at Stonehenge? Harry hesitated. He deliberately avoided tapping into that connection since repairing the boundary months ago. But now, with reality literally tearing around them, he had no choice. Cover me, he told the others. I need to get to the stone. While the others cast shield charms and attempted to distract the entity, Harry closed his eyes briefly, reaching for the part of himself he'd shut away, that awareness of death, of the boundary, of the space between worlds. It responded immediately, rushing back like a tide, filling him with both power and perspective. He opened his eyes, seeing the world differently now, the living glowing with inner light, the tears in reality bleeding darkness, and the entity itself a void, an absence rather than a presence. Now! Harry shouted, sprinting toward the stone. The others unleashed a barrage of spells, momentarily forcing the entity to defend itself. Harry slid the last few feet on his knees, hands outstretched for the stone. As his fingers closed around it, a jolt of energy surged through him, recognition, the second Hallow acknowledging its master. The entity howled in fury, abandoning its defense to lunge for Harry. Too late, Harry said, pulling the invisibility cloak from his shoulders and wrapping it around the stone. I reject your passage. I deny your purpose. As master of death, I command the boundary to hold. Power surged through him, not the raw magic of spells and charms, but something deeper, more fundamental. The power of the Hallows, yes, but also his unique position as one who had died yet returned, who had walked between worlds, who understood both sides of the boundary. The entity fought against his command, its form straining further through the tear. You cannot command me, mortal. I am death itself. No, Harry contradicted, certainty filling him. You're not death. Death is natural, necessary. You're something else, corruption, violation. Using death as a mask for your true purpose. The figure seemed to falter, its confident malevolence wavering. I am the end of all things. The final truth. Your fear, Harry realized aloud. The fear of death given form. Not death itself, but the terror of it that drives people to desperate acts. With each word, Harry's conviction grew stronger, and the entity seemed to weaken, its form becoming less substantial. The Hallows were never yours, Harry continued. They're tools for understanding death, for accepting it, not conquering it or eliminating the boundary. He held up the stone, still wrapped in the cloak. With these, I don't command death, I acknowledge it. Accept it as necessary, natural. The tears in reality began to shrink as Harry channeled his power through the Hallows, his connection to death strengthening the boundary rather than weakening it. The entity thrashed, fighting against the closing rifts. You cannot banish me forever, it snarled. As long as humans fear death, I will have power. Maybe, Harry acknowledged. But not today. Not here. With a final surge of power, Harry pushed against the entity, forcing it back through the main tear. The boundary between worlds snapped back into place, the rifts closing one by one until only the largest remained. The entity, now barely visible through the closing tear, fixed Harry with an empty gaze. This is not the end, Master of Death. There will be others like Thorne and Clearwater. The boundary will be tested again. And there will always be those who understand its necessity, Harry replied. Who will protect it? The tears sealed with a sound like a sigh, the entity vanishing from sight. The resurrection stone in Harry's hand grew cold, then crumbled to dust, its purpose fulfilled. For a moment, no one spoke, all of them processing what they'd witnessed. Bloody hell, Ron finally breathed. What was that thing? Not what it claimed to be, Hermione said thoughtfully. Not death itself, but a parasite, Harry finished. Something that feeds on fear of death, on grief, on the desperate desire to defy the natural order. And it's been influencing people, Ginny added. Thorne, Clearwater. Perhaps for centuries, McGonagall suggested. Encouraging attempts to break the boundary for its own purposes. Harry looked down at the pile of dust that had been the resurrection stone, then at the invisibility cloak still in his hand. 2 Hallows down, he said quietly. 1 still missing. The Elder Wand, Hermione nodded. If that entity managed to influence someone to take it. We need to find it, Harry agreed. Before it can be used to try again. As they spoke, a shimmering figure materialized near them, not pulled through forcibly like the previous apparitions, but appearing naturally, peacefully. Albus Dumbledore stood before them, smiling gently. Well done, Harry, he said, his voice clear but distant. The boundary is repairing itself. Those of us who were pulled back are returning to where we belong. Professor, Harry stepped forward. That entity, what was it really? A very old being, Dumbledore replied thoughtfully. One that has gone by many names through history, always seeking to eliminate the natural separation between life and death. Not for the benefit of either, but to feed on the chaos that would result. Will it try again? Ginny asked. Undoubtedly, Dumbledore said. But it will take time for it to regain strength. And now, thanks to Harry, the boundary is stronger than before. The Elder Wand is still missing, Harry pointed out. Ah, yes. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. About that. I believe if you check my tomb once more, you might be surprised. Harry frowned in confusion, but McGonagall was already moving toward the white marble structure. The others followed, finding the tomb still open from their earlier inspection. It's here, McGonagall said in disbelief, pointing to Dumbledore's folded hands. There, as if it had never been taken, lay the Elder Wand. How? Ron asked. The entity likely created an illusion, Hermione theorized. Made us think the wand was gone to lure Harry here with the other Hallows. Indeed, Miss Granger, Dumbledore's apparition confirmed, having followed them. It needed all 3 Hallows in one place to fully break through. So what now? Harry asked, looking at the wand. Do I take it? Hide it again? Dumbledore regarded him thoughtfully. What do you believe should be done, Harry? Harry considered the question carefully. The Hallows should be separated, he said finally. The stone is destroyed. The cloak belongs with me, as my family's legacy. And the wand. He looked at the instrument of power that had caused so much bloodshed through history. The wand should stay here, with you. Let its power die naturally, as you intended. Dumbledore beamed. Wisely decided. But what about my connection to death? Harry asked. I felt it again today, used it to fight that entity. Does that mean the boundary is weakened again? Not weakened, Dumbledore corrected. Simply, acknowledged. Your connection to death is part of who you are, Harry. Denying it completely was never the answer, nor was exploiting it to cross over at will. The middle path is, as always, the wisest choice. Meaning? Meaning you can sense the boundary, protect it when necessary, without crossing it, Dumbledore explained. A guardian rather than a walker between worlds. Harry felt the rightness of this. Not cutting himself off completely, but not indulging in the temptation to cross over either. A balanced approach. The entity said others would try again, Harry remembered. That as long as people fear death, it would have power. Fear gives many things power, Dumbledore agreed. The answer, as you've discovered, is not to fear death, nor to defy it, but to accept it as part of a greater journey. Dumbledore's form began to fade, becoming transparent as the boundary strengthened. I must return now. Remember, Harry, you are not alone in this guardianship. Those who understand the true nature of the boundary will always stand with you. Thank you, Professor, Harry said softly. No, my dear boy, Dumbledore's voice echoed as he vanished. Thank you. In the days that followed, the supernatural crisis subsided. The tears in the boundary sealed themselves, the apparitions returned to their proper place, and the magical community breathed a collective sigh of relief. The ministry, under Kingsley's leadership, established new regulations regarding memorial practices, subtly discouraging blood offerings without explicitly mentioning the recent events. The Department of Mysteries created a new division dedicated to monitoring the boundary between worlds, with Harry as a special consultant. 1 week later, Harry stood in the backyard of the burrow, watching as the extended Weasley family prepared for a celebration. 3 years since the Battle of Hogwarts, but this anniversary felt different, less about mourning what was lost, more about celebrating what remained. Canute for your thoughts? Ginny asked, sliding her arm around his waist. Harry smiled down at her. Just thinking about boundaries. Heavy subject for a party, she teased. Not really, Harry said, watching as George launched enchanted fireworks that formed Fred's laughing face in the sky. I used to think boundaries were walls, separating me from those I'd lost. But they're more like horizons. Not ending points but transitions. Ginny rested her head against his shoulder. That's surprisingly poetic for you, Potter. Harry laughed. Don't get used to it. Ron approached, carrying 3 butterbeers. Here you go, you too. Hermione says dinner's almost ready. Harry accepted the drink gratefully. How's she doing with the new position? After the incident, Hermione had been offered a research role in the Department of Mysteries, focusing specifically on boundary magic and its ethical applications. Loving it, Ron grinned. Though I barely understand half of what she talks about now. Something about quantifying spectral resonance or whatever. And the joke shop? Ginny asked. Booming, Ron said proudly. George is talking about opening a Hogsmeade branch next year. Their conversation was interrupted by Molly calling everyone to dinner. The long tables in the garden were laden with food, surrounded by friends and family, the living celebration of everything they'd fought for. As Harry took his seat between Ginny and Teddy Lupin, whose hair was currently cycling through rainbow colors, he felt a moment of perfect clarity. This was where he belonged, fully present in the world of the living, while honoring those who had passed on by living well. He still felt his connection to death, a quiet awareness humming beneath his everyday consciousness. But it no longer pulled at him, no longer tempted him to escape into what was lost. Instead, it grounded him, reminded him of the preciousness of each moment. Teddy tugged at his sleeve. "Uncle Harry, watch this." The 3-year-old scrunched up his face in concentration, his features shifting to a passable imitation of Harry's, complete with a lightning bolt scar. "Brilliant, Teddy," Harry laughed, ruffling the boy's hair, which remained stubbornly black for all of 5 seconds before turning turquoise again. Across the table, Andromeda Tonks watched with a bittersweet smile. He has his mother's gift and his father's thoughtfulness. They would be so proud. They are, Harry said with quiet certainty. They see him. Not directly, but they know. Andromeda's eyes glistened. That brings me more comfort than you know, Harry. The dinner progressed with toasts to those they'd lost, stories of pranks and adventures, and plans for the future. Harry participated fully, no longer half present as he'd been for so long after the war. Later, as twilight settled over the garden and enchanted lanterns flickered to life, Harry found himself alone for a moment. He closed his eyes, feeling the boundary between worlds, intact, strong, yet permeable in the right ways. Not a wall but a veil, thin enough for love to pass through. "You found your balance," a familiar voice observed. Harry opened his eyes to find Hermione watching him, a knowing look in her eyes. "I have," he agreed. "Finally. Guardian of the boundary," she said thoughtfully. "It suits you better than Master of Death ever did." Harry smiled. "Less dramatic, definitely." Hermione's expression grew serious. "That entity, whatever it was, it will return eventually. Try again." "I know," Harry acknowledged. "But we'll be ready. All of us." "All of us," Hermione agreed, squeezing his arm before rejoining the party. Harry remained for a moment longer, looking up at the emerging stars. Somewhere beyond that twinkling light, beyond the boundary he now protected, those he loved continued their own journey. Not gone, just ahead on the path he would someday follow. But not yet. Not for a long, long time. He had living to do first. "Harry." Ginny called from the table, where George was preparing to unveil some new magical invention. "You're missing it." Harry smiled, turning away from the stars and back to the warm glow of family and friendship. "Coming." As he rejoined the celebration, he carried a quiet certainty within him. The veil between worlds would always be there, not a barrier to be conquered or destroyed, but a natural transition to be respected. And when his time eventually came to cross it permanently, those he loved would be waiting. But until then, his place was here, in this world, with these people, living fully, loving deeply, and guarding the boundary between life and death. Not walking between worlds, but belonging fully to one while honoring the other. The true meaning of Master of Death. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.